In your own bed, you have slept. 100% restoration of HP and CP. I will never again ignore that notification without expressing my gratitude. Now that I think about it, I should have gotten a jutsu scroll from that goddamn rabbit, but I don't care if it burns in hell. It is impossible to learn. Inaba rabbit, jutsu. Conditions. Dex 70+. Well, damn, even though that rabbit is giving me trouble, I might as well see what happens if I make the effort to fulfill the requirements. Inaba rabbit. Active, passive. Level 1 to 100. Costs 100 to 1 carbon monophosphide per second. Increases base movement speed by 100 to 300%. Oh my goodness, that is really beneficial. I heard the front door open and close before I had time to think about it further. A voice called out to the house, "I'm home." It was my father. I yelled back, "Dad," as I bounded out of bed, ignoring the fact that I was only wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and rushed into my giggling father, who gave me a firm embrace in return. My dad said, "Hey kid, Hokage-sama told me you were home, and that you were being promoted. Congratulations," as he looked down at me with a weary but proud expression. My face ached from the smile on my face, and I felt my heartbeat quicken at his recognition. I stepped back and allowed him to remove his shoes before we went into the kitchen, where I immediately instructed him to sit down while I prepared breakfast. As he observed me cooking, he said affectionately, "Every time I see you, you remind me more and more of your mother. So, I heard a rumor you've created a new technique?" After blushing a little in response to his comment, I smiled and used chakra flow, chakra scalpel, on one of the kitchen knives to demonstrate to him that, although the knife wasn't very good at carrying the chakra, it was sufficient to convey the technique. I told him, it's actually really simple, while he looked at the knife and used his Sharingan. Chakra flow and chakra scalpel are both already similar techniques in nature. This just takes advantage of that. Once I get comfortable with chakra nature manipulation, I'm going to start trying to mix that in with it to see what happens. As I dropped my own technique, my father gave me a nod of understanding and let his Sharingan fade. As I returned to my cooking, he said, "Still, impressive, you are living up to everyone calling you a genius," which made me blush even more. I muttered back, "I don't feel like one," loud enough for him to hear, and he laughed. As I concentrated on preparing our breakfast, I remained quiet for a few more minutes. I broke the ice by asking, "So, you and Mom know about my abilities?" "We do," he said coolly, his tone approving. "You brother was the one who caught into it at first. He spotting you learning a jutsu in a scroll without even opening it." I pouted as I complained, and here I thought I was being careful with that, but, yeah, it'll be easier to show you. Invite Gen AI Uchiha to party. My father blinked and looked in disbelief at the box that materialized in front of him. "You received an invitation to Yuriko Uchiha's party. Agree?" "Why, N," he pressed the accept button out of curiosity. My prompting, "Now say, status," caused him to do so. Genrai Uchiha's name 48th level 15,987 25,000 EXP. 39 years old male gender title. Jonin, plus 50% of all gains in reputation. Data 10,709 hydrogen phosphide CP. 8,200 STR 103 int. 90 dex 90. VIT 103 WIS 90 luck. 45 5,921,763 Ryo. How curious, my father remarked while reviewing his statistics. It's accurate, I take it? I shrugged and started setting out our breakfast, which consisted of simple eggs, bacon, and hash browns. As far as I can tell, I said. When I gain a level, I get stat 5 stat points to distribute, and when I do distribute them I do feel stronger. My dad responded with a slow nod. Now fully focused on its capabilities, he raised an eyebrow and asked, "What else can it show?" I responded, "Try saying, perks, it should bring up modifiers," as I searched for the right words to describe their operation. They're either natural born, or appear because of events, like I got a perk for genius when I got back to Konoha because everyone kept calling me one apparently. With just a handful to his name, my father opened the perks menu and made an audible noise of approval. Benefits when stats are within 15 points of one another, all-rounder, +1 to STR, int, VIT, and WIS per level. Perk lost when balance is lost. When employing, Uchiha Interceptor Fist, Taijutsu style, Interceptor Fistmaster, plus 100% damage. Fire Ninjutsu Expert, plus 25% Fire Ninjutsu effectiveness. Uchiha, you can unlock the Sharingan by gaining +1 dex and WIS per level. Very accurate indeed, my dad thought as he reviewed the benefits, And how long have you had this power for? I confessed, a couple of months ago. It started a month before I graduated from the academy. I didn't say anything, because, well, I don't know if it's just me, or if it would be passed on. Understandable, this power could easily be abused by many in the village, and I am not eager to see my daughter used a tool, he replied with comprehension. Have you told anyone else? I sighed and told him, just Sakari ni-san when we met up at Tensai Bridge. Nobody else. I'm not even completely sure I want to tell anybody else. He gave a nod. He calmly told me, then we won't say anything, and I had to wipe away a few tears. Like my mother, he was displaying a level of acceptance I had never seen before, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was because of my honored reputation status with them. I just gave him a joyful smile while shaking my head. Thank you, I muttered appreciatively. I'm planning on doing some training later today. Would you be able to help me with it? Of course, was his kind response. If you want, I can help you find your chakra nature and show you the basic level of the nature manipulation training for your chakra elements. I chirped in agreement. Sounds like fun, as I felt the tension in my shoulders that I had never known existed subside. I look forward to spending some time with you, Dad. My father laughed a little and smiled at me, which made me feel good. I'll only be in Konoha for a week, but I look forward to spending time with you as well, Yuriko-chan, he said with kindness. Grinning broadly at him, I resumed eating, anticipating the upcoming week spent with my dad. I held the paper between my thumb and index finger and gazed at it thoughtfully. I looked up at my father, perplexed, and asked, how do they make these? I get how they work. They're like the metal we use for weapons like the kodachi you got for me, or Tasuki no Usagi. But what I don't get is how paper is made for it. Well, I'm not exactly sure on this, but from what I can recall, the Shodai gifted a neutral country's hidden village with a seed he infused with his chakra, my father said, frowning as he attempted to evoke the memory, laughing at my interrogation as I examined the paper he had given me. When it grew, they found that it absorbed chakra and shifted based upon the dominate elemental nature of that chakra, so they decided to use it as a way to find one's element, which at the time was far more difficult. Harvesting sections of the tree, they turned it into paper, which we now use to figure out elements. My father laughed when I asked, so basically almost everything is the Shodai's fault? It was an old joke in Konoha that was used in a humorous way and mostly referred to the Shodai giving the other villages the biju that he sealed, with the exception of the Kyubi. Exactly, he nodded to confirm. Now stop dallying and channel your chakra into it. I followed his instructions while rolling my eyes, which resulted in half of the page becoming soggy and the other half catching fire and meeting in the center. You've found your chakra affinities, congratulations. Affinity for natural water, bonus added. Looking up at him, I asked, so, fire and water, right? Indeed so, he laughed and confirmed. Not exactly a common combination considering water beats fire, but I think the water chakra comes from your grandmother on your mother's side and your grandfather on my side. I said, neat, as I brushed the tiny piece of ash from my arm. So, what's my training exercise for them? With my Sharingan turned on, I watched as he gathered chakra into the leaf before it changed to a reddish color and burst into a small flame. Well, for fire chakra you need to ignite a leaf using chakra, while with water chakra you drain the water out of it, he explained, reaching up into the tree in our backyard to pick a leaf and holding it in his hands. Want to try? Quest alert. Train with your father to master the fire nature manipulation and water nature manipulation techniques. Reward plus 1000 reputation and plus 2500 express for each skill acquired with Genrai Uchiha. Bonus goal: raise both abilities to level 5. Reward: each element's random D-ranked ninjutsu scroll. I took a leaf of my own, though I had to leap up to pull one off a branch, and then I sat down on the grass and focused on my chakra. Definitely, I said. It was quite simple for me to shape my chakra into a fire-natured chakra thanks to my experience with the fire release. Chakra flow. The real difficulty, though, came when I tried to ignite the leaf like my father had done. At the moment, all I was getting was some steam coming from the leaf as it started to dry up. As he observed my efforts, my father said, not a bad first attempt, with approval. He calmly explained, your experience with the fire release, chakra flow, is definitely showing, but a leaf isn't as sensitive to the different elements as chakra metal, while replacing my dried out leaf with a new one. So when you mold your chakra into the fire element, you need to make it more intense than normal in order to actually catch the leaf aflame. When you mold your chakra, try and keep the image of an intense fire inside of your mind to help you focus on it. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and then repeated my actions, channeling the chakra into the leaf before I began molding it again. This time, I recalled the flames I had released against the rabbit, and as I focused, I felt my chakra shifting. I gritted my teeth and felt something briefly burn my fingers, causing me to yell as I let go of the now burning leaf and shook my hands in an attempt to cool them, much to my father's amusement. "That's the way," he exclaimed, tapping his hands in celebration. "That's exactly how you do fire manipulation. You have a new skill as a reward for your hard work. Passive. Level 1 to 0.00%, plus 10% effectiveness to fire ninjutsu, fire nature manipulation." When the new skill window appeared in front of me, I exclaimed, "Yes," and laughed a little in my excitement, which caused my father to laugh as well. He raised an eyebrow at me and held out a leaf in a defiant way, asking, "Want to try it with water now? I won't be able to give you an example this time." I grabbed the leaf and exclaimed, "You know it, I'll get it down in no time," enjoying the rush of defeating fire nature manipulation. After settling in, I began directing my chakra into the leaf while centering myself with a few more soothing breaths. It was difficult at first because I was trying to focus while picturing water in my mind, specifically a memory of swimming with my brother in the lake close to the compound. I could also sense that something was going on with the leaf, and my chakra did feel like it was flowing differently. When I opened my eyes, I noticed that the leaf had split open and was leaking water. I looked up at my father and asked, "That's not what's supposed to happen, is it?" He shook his head. His gentle words, "No, the leaf is supposed to be dry when you have completed the exercise. Instead of pushing the element in, you need to pull it out." I took the new leaf, nodded, closed my eyes, and focused once more. This time, I experimented with pushing the water inside of it around instead of pushing as much chakra as I could into it. I only pushed a small amount in to connect my chakra to the leaf. When my father gave me a quick tap on the shoulder to alert me to the fact that a portion of the leaf had been broken, I startled. I started the process over, accepting the new leaf. It took me almost an hour and a stack of leaves to finally master the exercise to the point where a pop-up appeared in front of me, but my father, bless him, was a very patient man. "You have a new skill as a reward for your hard work. Passive, water nature manipulation. Level 1 to 0.00%, plus 10% water ninjutsu effectiveness." I roared, finally, as I fell back onto the grass, my word that was hard. From what I've learned when studying nature manipulation, those who have opposing affinities like yours will have a hard time learning how to manipulate the opposite one after learning the first due to how different it is and the conflicting nature of it, my father told me, smiling slightly as he sat next to me and crossed his legs comfortably while looking down at me. I looked up at him and hummed as I considered what he had told me. "So if I had said an earth alignment rather than water, then it would have been easier?" I asked. "From what I can tell, yes," he replied with a smile. "But now that you have the feeling of it, you shouldn't have as much trouble with it, and once you master them, I'm sure you can use them in ways that even the Sandame could only dream of." The idea made me laugh, and I smiled broadly before jumping up. Then, with a fire burning inside of me, I yelled, "Well then, only one way to master them then. Time to start training." As I concentrated on my training, my father, who appeared to have aged a few years, laughed at my enthusiasm and helped me with my attempts to manipulate the elemental chakra. He even gave me instructions on how to perform the other nature manipulation exercises. Spending time with my father was pleasant. He was like a solid rock that had absorbed the heat of the sun, but he lacked my mother's inner fire and my brother's playful demeanor. It was the only way I could think of to describe him, and I realize it's a weird approximation. He helped me progress from intermediate kenjutsu to advanced Uchiha-style kenjutsu by being patient with me, thoroughly explaining everything I asked him, and teaching me small tips that made manipulating chakras easier. He gave me 2 scrolls after I finished the quest at the end of our training session: Fire Release, Blazing Skull, and Water Release, Water Mantle. These scrolls ultimately reminded me that I wanted to learn the Inari Rabbit Jutsu, which in turn reminded me of the stat points I needed to distribute. My father laughed when I yelled that I had forgotten something so simple. My father laughed even harder when I began swearing like a sailor after my points were allotted, and even though I had all 15 points going into Dex, I was still short by 1 point. After I had finished my tirade, he observed me as I learned the 2 ninjutsus and, without consulting the skill sheet, questioned me about the procedure and my level of knowledge. We then went back inside to begin preparing dinner and talking about more straightforward topics. That evening is one of my favorite memories of my father, and it devastated me when, a week before I was to be released from my medical leave, he left. My mother returned home with a haunted expression on her face and announced that he had been killed in combat. As usual, as time went on, I redeployed as a Chunin of Konohagakure, but this time it was with my mother to a different front that required additional medical support to handle the volume of injured that was overwhelming the available medics. Along with my Chunin vest, the Sandame presented me with a certificate stating that I had been promoted to medic, 2nd grade, which I had earned through my actions during the Battle of Tensai Bridge. For the next 2 years, I stayed at that front where we were assisting Sunagakure shinobi in their fight against Kirigakure. In fact, it wasn't until my mother informed me that it was my birthday that I realized I had been there for a full year. It was a blur. At one point, I was screaming for another medic to help me stop a man from bleeding out of an artery while I was in a medical tent, and at another point, I was slicing through what could only be a member of the Hizuka clan while my chakra scalpel, blood was splattered all over my body. Chika-chan was quieter than usual and prone to trembling in terror when the ground shook for any reason. Hasai-sensei was the same. Aoi-kun was more determined than ever, and he became more vicious when he engaged the enemy. Fortunately, I had rejoined my team on that front. The fact that I simply stopped caring about the wounds I caused to the people I fought, which used to disgust me when I tore a man's lungs apart and left him gasping for air, was a subtle but profound change that I knew I had also undergone. I was on the verge of losing my mind when I realized this. It took my mother and Hasai-sensei an hour to calm me down, and I had to stay in the medical ward for a month before I could return to the battlefield without trembling. I got to know Minato Namikaze, the father of Naruto and the future Yondaime Hokage, at that time. The absence of Iwagakure shinobi on the field had given rise to rumors that a ceasefire might be called with Iwa, which were later verified when Minato-san entered the base that Sunagakure and I shared, trying to find me. I looked at the blonde man incredulously and said, "I'm sorry, Minato-san, but you want me to be a part of the escort for Sandame-sama? But, why? I'm not even 10 and I'm only a Chunin." Minato-san responded with a smile, appearing totally relaxed. "Simple, you are 9 years old, and a Chunin," was his response. "Plus you have been making a name for yourself out here, Sword Scalpel, Yuriko." Although I frowned a little at the name, I couldn't deny that it was a more flattering moniker than the one the enemy had been using to refer to me. Bloody Scalpel. I muttered to myself, stupid overblown reputation, which made Minato-san laugh. Knowing that Iwa had dubbed the Yellow Flash, the Massacre Flash, he said, "Indeed, they are troubling things." Suddenly, my own didn't sound so horrible. Important quest warning. Accompany the Sandame Hokage to the Sandame Tsuchikage's peace negotiations. Reward 25,000 express, plus 15,000 Konohagakure reputation, plus 5,000 Iwagakure reputation, and so on. Bonus goal. Reward. Understood. When will we be leaving then? I asked, sagging a little as I let out a sigh and felt the weight of my Chunin vest weigh down on me. I snapped to attention after brushing my now waist-length hair over my shoulder, and the last person to try to grab it when they had gotten close was castrated with my chakra scalpel. Since then, many people have avoided going for it. Minato grinned more broadly in return. "As soon as you're ready," he answered. "Get whatever you feel you may need and meet me back here." I gave a nod, then pivoted and strode out of the command building into the scorching Sunagakure desert. The edge of the desert, to be exact, but it was still freezing at night and scorching during the day. Benefits of spending 2 years here. Thank you, RyugaXD, for helping me get a healthy tan after I healed from my sunburn. I was no longer as pale as most Uchiha. I twitched my lip at that, but I did check myself out in the mirror to make sure I looked professional enough. The subtle curves in my new cup bra brought back a more vivid memory of a year ago, when I woke up with the worst stomach cramp of my life and blood between my legs. I'm grateful that my shinobi discipline worked itself out so I could wake up my mother without making a huge commotion, but once I had a silencing seal on, I screamed non-stop both vocally and mentally. Thanks to some of the tips my mother gave me when she helped me clean up, I should be free and clear for a few more weeks. Fortunately, for the sake of professionalism, my period had just ended for the month. My attire stayed mostly the same, but I had added a pair of arm guards with reinforcement seals for added protection and was wearing my Chunin vest instead of my jacket. I turned away from the window and went to my office. After making a few minor changes to my hair, my mother insisted that I keep it longer than it was now because it looked good on me. I was essentially second in command of the medics at this point, with my mother being the only one who actually outranked me because there weren't many Jonin medics. Let me tell you something, though. Nothing like being put on the hot plate to make you learn quickly because after 6 months, I had mastered mystical palm, and was proficient in performing surgeries both on and off the field. This was essentially just a desk and bunk in the medical ward with some privacy curtains hung up. We were always busy in this tent, so I told my mom, "Hey mom, I'm getting redeployed, as I stepped inside and got her to look up from where she was doing an inventory check. Minato-san told me Sandame-sama wants me a part of his escort. It was surprising how helpful my mom's owlish blink was for inventory counts, even though it looked strange given that she was using her Sharingan at the time. In the same tone I used when I questioned my orders, she asked, "He wants you to be a part of the escort?" I said, "That's what I asked, but apparently having Sword Scalpel Yuriko around as their medic for the escort is a message of some kind." As I made my way to my office and passed through the occupied beds. It seemed like we were always busy, the beds were always full, the shinobi in the beds didn't even bother to hide their prying ears, and we were all voracious gossips. "We're deploying as soon as I'm ready." Before coming to my office, my mother sighed and handed her clipboard to the assistant medic who was assisting her with the counts. As she assisted me in assembling my pack, she asked, "Are you stocked up on kunai and shuriken?" This gave me the opportunity to prepare, beginning as usual with slipping Tasuki no Usagi into the holster on my right leg. I smiled as I put on my arm guard, checking to see if it needed to be adjusted again, 3 times in the last month alone, then grabbing my equipment pouch and slipping it in place. "Plenty to spare," I assured. "I need more shampoo though, why won't you let me cut my hair shorter already?" I got the look from my mom, which all mothers have, "Because you look best with long hair." She put a fresh bottle of shampoo in the bag she was packing and said to me primly, "And Uchiha Kunoichi always look their best." Before testing the draw on Tasuki no Usagi, I sighed and rolled my eyes at her argument, which I had heard 1,000 times by this point. I sulked and gave her a slight glare as she grinned triumphantly. Okay, but you get to buy my shampoo from now on," I said. "Oh, don't lie to yourself, dear, you like it as much as I do. I've seen how much extra time you spend on your hair when you can," she said with intent. I blushed when I was discovered because, in reality, I liked my hair the way it was and found that brushing it took up more of my free time than sleeping did. I muttered, "Status," in an attempt to divert attention and silence my sneering mother. Yuriko's name level, 40 Express. 18,762, 21,009 years old. Gender. Female. Title. Chunin, plus 25% of all gains in reputation. Data 1781 hydrogen phosphide CP. 5910 STR41, 51, INT 83. Dex 98, 122, VIT 41 WIS -70 luck, 27 Rio. 4,672,153. After closing the window and checking my abilities and benefits, I nodded to myself. Then, I sighed and rolled my shoulders, only to freeze when my mother placed her hands on them and gently kneaded the tension out of them. She put her forehead on top of my scalp and whispered, "It's okay," even though I was only 4 feet 8 inches compared to my mother's 5 feet 4 inches. "Your father would be so proud of you right now," she said, her voice full of emotion, and my eyes pricked with tears as I recalled his short funeral, where his name was added to the memorial stone. Weeper than I wanted to admit, I said, "I miss him," in a tiny voice. My mother patted my chest and said, "So do I, but he's still with us. He will always be proud of you, so try your hardest and come home, okay?" "Yeah," I said, using the backs of my hands to wipe away my tears and straightening up as my mother withdrew, "I'll definitely be back." Before patting my shoulder and passing my bag, my mother gave me the Uchiha smirk, which I verified as trademarked, and said, "And I will be waiting, now go. Don't keep Minato-san waiting." I nodded, slung the bag over my back, gave my mother another quick embrace, and departed the tent to return to the command post. I declared, "Minato-san, I am ready," as I entered the building at a parade rest with my hands clasped at my lower back and my legs shoulder-width apart. "All right then," Minato said, putting a hand on my shoulder. I raised an eyebrow, wondering why he was doing this. As Sensei would say, "Clench your butt." Minato looked up as I was speaking, giving me a once-over before nodding. The world was upside down and yellow the next thing I knew. My stomach resisted as I tried to process what had happened, and I fell to my knees as my vision swam. When I looked up, I saw a white-haired man with 2 red trails under his eyes clutching his sides as he guffawed in laughter, Minato-sen looking apologetic, and Sandame-sama looking amused. "Sorry about that," Minato-san said empathetically, adding, "It should pass soon. Hiraishin is hard on everyone the first time experiencing it." "Was the Hiraishin there?" With a look of disbelief, I asked. I felt like I was thrown out of a window buck naked. "Don't think I've heard someone describe it quite like that before," Minato said, fighting a smile of his own. Sandame-sama chuckled a little as Sandame-sama, who could only be Jiraiya-sama, laughed even harder at what I had said. I complained a little as my stomach calmed down, my vision cleared up, and I was standing up as if nothing had happened. I apologize for my rude behavior, Hokage-sama, I said to the village chief, who simply waved it away. He smiled kindly at me and said, quite all right, Yuriko-chan. Thank you for agreeing to come with me today. Then I snarled in my head, not like I could say no to an order. Of course, Hokage-sama, I said aloud. May I assume that the idiot laughing over there is Jiraiya-sama? Minato snorted at that, and Jiraiya froze with a look of betrayal. Indeed so, Yuriko-chan, this is my student, Jiraiya, he said in his introduction, looking at Jiraiya with a hint of amusement. Jiraiya, this is Yuriko Uchiha, our medic for the trip. I'm glad to meet you, he said at last, holding out his hand. I hear you're toting an unusual skill set, Fuinjutsu, Ninjutsu, Iryojutsu, and Kenjutsu. Jiraiya complained slightly as he straightened himself, adjusted the older-styled flak jacket he was wearing, and then turned to face me properly with an appraising eye. By Kami, you just can't appreciate how big this man is until you're right beside him in real life. On paper, it doesn't seem quite balanced, in my opinion. I make it work somehow, Jiraiya-sama, I replied, dismissing his remark that he was inquisitive and not insulting like some people I had met before they saw me in battle. I guess all it takes is some ingenuity and thinking outside of the box, I said, accepting his hand and marveling at how his seemed to engulf mine. With a bark of laughter, Jiraiya replied, a shinobi after my own heart, with a smile. Sandaime-sama cleared his throat and said, now that introductions are out of the way, bringing the three of us to attention as he rose from his desk. I blushed a little because I had just realized he was wearing his combat uniform. Should we be heading to Tetsu no Kuni? I bowed and Jiraiya laughed at my formality. Of course, Hokage-sama, was all I said. Huh, so the samurai are holding the peace talks? Smart. Sandaime-sama said, very well then, and we all three easily fell into step with him as he made his way to the door. With minimal fanfare, we left the village after a brief meeting with what could only be Homura-san and Kaharu-san, during which Sandaime-sama gave them clear instructions before we hurried out the gate and into the trees. Minato-san and Jiraiya-sama soon began asking me about my Fuinjutsu skills, and I admitted that I mostly used it in a support role with enhancing my clothing with seals to provide passive benefits. I received appreciative looks from them as I managed to keep pace with them through the trees, thankfully avoiding the need to use the Inaba Rabbit jutsu as I had assumed I would have to keep up with them. When we stopped for the night, Jiraiya seemed to be particularly interested in my chakra control seal and asked to see it. Despite being mentioned, the seal was reportedly very difficult to locate. In the end, we came to a halt an hour before sunset, which allowed us ample time to prepare our food and set up camp. Yuriko-san, would you mind sparring with me? After our tents were erected and a fire was burning, Minato-san asked in a courteous manner. Minato-san, are you with me? I don't think I would be much of a challenge for you, I asked, puzzled. Nothing like that, Minato-san told me, shaking his head with a supportive smile. I just wish to see your skill set in combat. It's one thing to talk and read about it, but another entirely to see it in person. Important quest warning. Minato Namikaze spars, which last for 1 minute. Reward plus 1000 reputation with Hiruzen Sarutobi, Jiraiya, and Minato Namikaze, and plus 5000 express. Bonus goal: the final 130 minutes, the last 2 minutes. The final 2 30-minute or minutes reward for every goal accomplished. You will receive plus 5000 express and plus 1000 reputation with Minato Namikaze, Jiraiya, and Hiruzen Sarutobi. I nodded, swallowing hard, and the mission was accepted. All right, then, I suppose we should do this. There is no way in hell that I will be able to survive a minute with the yellow flash if I hold back, I said tremblingly as I got up, moved a few feet away from Minato-san, and prepared myself with my kodachi in hand as my chakra flow. Chakra scalpel. Activated silently and seamlessly. As he produced a kunai, Jiraiya-sama declared solemnly, okay, this match will end when one hits the ground with both shoulders, or I call it over. You may start when this kunai hits the ground. As the Toad Sanin tossed the kunai languidly, I took a deep breath to calm myself and shifted into my modified Uchiha Kenjutsu stance, holding my kodachi behind me in a reverse grip and bending my knees to bring me low to the ground and ready to leap in any direction. Meanwhile, Minato-san was standing in a relaxed position with a reverse grip on one of his trademark tri-pronged kunai. As the kunai struck the ground, my Sharingan activated, giving me enough perception to see Minato-san as he blurred forward. The man was incredibly fast even without Hiroshin. Chakra rushed to my legs as I used the 5-handed Inaba Rabbit jutsu without using any of them or voicing them to hasten my return. As I bounced off a tree, ripping a large portion of it off as I launched myself towards Minato-san with a slash of my kodachi, I could tell by his wide eyes that he was not expecting me to even approach matching his speed. He disappeared as I was ready to strike his flak vest with the tip of my blade. The only sign of his presence was a few yellow spots. Minato-san was right in front of me, holding the kunai in his hand with what could only be a Rasengan in his free hand, and then my instincts flared a warning at me, causing me to grab the ground to shift my position just enough to let a tri-pronged kunai sail past me from above. In response, I threw my foot at the Rasengan's wrist, knocking it aside as my free hand reached for his jacket, only to have it close on empty air as he disappeared once more. In an attempt to spot Minato-san, I rolled myself in midair more out of desperation than instinct, barely avoiding 3 of his kunai as my feet touched the ground. I took advantage of this and threw myself forward in a sprint powered by an Inaba rabbit, which was the best move I could have made at the time, according to a small explosion behind me. I came to a stop and spun around as I planted my back against a tree, and I saw Minato-san observing me as a cloud of dust cleared away from the small indent in the ground that could only have been made by a Rasengan. How long has it been since we started? Is this how it feels to take on a cage-level opponent? I hope I didn't fuck up. Sweat trickled down my face as I panted. I can't let myself get sidetracked now, do or be in pain time, so I gritted my teeth, stopped my thoughts in their tracks, and concentrated on Minato-san as he retook his position. My first technique created with chakra flow, chakra scalpel, chakra flow, chakra scalpel, straight cut. I acted, a tiger seal in front of my face as I inhaled before releasing a fire release. Great fireball, without warning, not the best one I've released, but still 4 feet in diameter easily. I didn't wait to see if it hit or not, I just started charging after the fireball and swung my kodachi. The idea was straightforward. Extend the chakra flow with a single swing. I did this at 5 feet, following the same principle as Asuma Sarutobi's keen technique to increase the range of his knives. Minato-san was no longer there, and my slash sliced through my own fireball, spreading the flames as the form was broken, only on problem. I did the only thing I could think of and threw myself aside. I never stopped sending chakra to the Inaba rabbit jutsu, which really saved my life because I was positive that whatever jutsu Minato-san used that sent a lightning bolt tearing through the clearing would have hurt a lot if I had been even a second slower. I followed the jutsu back to its starting point, but there was nobody there. I caught a glimpse of Minato-san teleporting right in front of his own jutsu, and my eyes widened as he finished a set of seals, held his tri-pronged kunai in front of him, and disappeared as soon as his jutsu reached him. I barely saw the jutsu behind me before it slammed into me, and I went pale when I heard a crackling behind me. My mind briefly went blank as electricity surged inside of me before collapsing as it came to an end. It's finished. As I blinked multiple times and twitched a little in an attempt to comprehend what had just transpired, Jiraiya-sama yelled, ending the match. I said, "Holy fuck," as soon as I was able to control my body again. That's exactly what I said when we sparred after he learned the Hiraishin, Jiraiya-sama agreed, laughing as he helped me sit up and patted my back. All said and done, though, good hustle out there, how were you moving so quickly? He said. I had found a scroll for the Inaba rabbit jutsu a couple of years ago, I said with a scowl. I practiced with it until I could do it without using seals. Sandaime-sama looked nostalgically and said, "Oh ho, haven't heard that jutsu name in quite a few years," asking, "Where did you find it?" "The Blackwoods training ground," I said. "Found it on the demonic rabbit that was in there." "Demon rabbit?" Minato-san raised an eyebrow in question. "Ah, it was in the center of the field," I replied with a flush. "I managed to kill it, but it was a nasty little beast and I think it somehow learned the jutsu itself because he was moving as fast as I do when using it." After a few moments, Sandaime-sama nodded thoughtfully and hummed in response. "Ah yes, the chakra mutations," he said. "Have you been into any of the other ones?" I blushed and said, "Haven't had the chance with being deployed," as I started to repair the wounds from our brief battle. Plus I wanted to get more experience before going into the next one. Minato-san grinned and said, "Commendable," adding, "I must say though, your skills are impressive for one your age." As the 3 men around the fire laughed, I reflexively denied, I'm not much," trying to hide my darkening blush in the collar of my Chunin vest while catching a glimpse of the quest completion alert. Holy crap, that was only a minute and a half? "Yuri-san, what are you looking at?" Minato-san looked at me perceptively and gently prodded, his blue eyes kind. Unsure of how to conceal the response without raising their suspicions, I stood motionless. Jiraiya-sama effortlessly added, she was definitely reading something earlier as well, his whole body at ease, while my stomach turned over in alarm. Sandame-sama's voice sliced like a knife through my impending panic attack. It's okay, Yuriko-chan. You can tell us. Might be easier just to show you, I said, turning my head to face them and hesitantly glancing at their friendly faces before letting out a deep sigh. Invite Minato Namikaze, Jiraiya, and Hiruzen Sarutobi to party. My power, I call it, the gamer, because, well, it makes things look like they were a game to me. I explained in a small voice, after all three blinked as the boxes appeared in front of them, asking if they wanted to accept my invitation. I get quest pop-ups when things happen sometimes, like when Minato-san asked me to spar with him. The condition was that I had to last a minute against him with a bonus reward for every extra 30 seconds I lasted. I swallowed when I had a chance to glance again at the three strongest Konoha ninjas sitting close to me, who were looking curiously at the boxes. And by inviting others, you can relate this power to them? Sandame-sama raised an eyebrow in question. Only in part, I said with a grin. I experimented with my mom while we were deployed together. When we're in a party, I can track their position, health and chakra pool as well as their current status, but while I get stat points to distribute as I wish upon leveling up, others don't. Instead, theirs is distributed automatically. I'm not quite sure how they are distributed though, but it will allow you to take a look at your own stats, perks and skills. How can I accomplish that? As he accepted the invitation, Minato-san asked, his name flashing in the corner of my eye with his level next to it, along with his HP and CP totals. Holy shit, he's level 89. I replied, just say status, skills, or perks respectively, gradually gaining confidence as I conversed with them. Soon after, the names of Sandame-sama and Jiraiya-sama, who had levels of 90 and 88, respectively, appeared next to his. My god, these three were monsters. Interesting, Sandame-sama thought as he started perusing what must have been a huge skill page. I assume these levels would correspond to our degree of jutsu proficiency? I confirmed with a nod. Yes, and I recently learned I couldn't start dropping seals for my jutsus until around level 50 with the option to drop another seal every 10 levels after that, but it would reduce the power of the jutsu if I do that, I droned on. I only maxed out a few like chakra scalpel, because I used them so much and am really comfortable with them. With a reassuring smile, Jiraiya-sama rumbled, calm down, kid. What else could it do with a party, could it? Oh, it only has a range of about 2.5 miles, though, and it would appear as though you were talking to yourself. I can set up a communication network with anyone in the party, I said, letting myself relax a little. I can understand why you would be hesitant to reveal this, as the possibilities are nearly limitless, Minato-san said with approval. I blushed as I slowly nodded. I didn't want to be put into a room or something, I murmured, narrowing my eyes somewhat. I was afraid that people would try and get the power for themselves somehow, or try and breed me to get more people with access. I'm not even sure if any kids I have would get it. I don't even know where it came from. Well, not for certain anyways. You have a hypothesis? Minato-san raised an eyebrow in a gentle question. Well, I had a dream after I got it. Vision? Using a partial truth, I told them, I'm not sure, but something was talking to me through the boxes. From the tone of it, I guess I'm just amusement for them or something, I said, adding that reincarnation was a can of worms I didn't want to open. The three adults exchanged a serious glance. Jiraiya-sama said grimly, Danzo would do a lot to try and get his hands on her if he knew, which caused Sandame-sama to recoil slightly. He would, unfortunately, he sighed heavily. Minato, Jiraiya, this is an S-class secret, he declared after a moment, causing me to blink as I looked up. Never say a word of this to anyone else. I will not either, to everyone else. Yuriko-chan here is just another splendid shinobi of Konohagakure. As the other two shinobi nodded in agreement, I gazed at Sandame-sama with a slack jaw. Why you would do that, for me? I asked softly, still in disbelief. Of course, Sandame-sama smiled warmly and reassured me. You are a member of Konohagakure's shinobi corps, and one with such potential. I will protect your freedom as I would any other. I choked out, thank you, Hokage-sama, with Minato-san sitting next to me and putting a reassuring arm around my shoulders as I sniffed and tried to wipe away the tears that were starting to well up in my eyes with the palm of my hands. All he had to say was, of course, Yuriko-chan, and the tears began to fall freely in relief. Essential quest finished. Minato Namikaze spars, which last for 1 minute. Reward plus 1000 reputation with Hiruzen Sarutobi, Jiraiya, and Minato Namikaze, and plus 5000 Express. Bonus goal: the final 130 minutes are finished. The last 2 minutes are incomplete. The final 230 minutes are incomplete. Reward: for every goal accomplished, you will receive plus 5000 Express and plus 1000 Reputation with Minato Namikaze, Jiraiya, and Hiruzen Sarutobi. You've advanced 1 level. You now have a friendly reputation with Jiraiya. You now have a friendly reputation with Minato Namikaze. You now have a friendly reputation with Hiruzen Sarutobi. Yuriko's name level: 41 Express, 7762, 21509 years old. Gender: female. Title: Chunin, plus 25% of all gains in reputation. Data: 1781 hydrogen phosphide CP, 5910 STR41, 51, INT 83. Dex 98, 122, VIT 41 WIS -70 luck, 27 Rio, 4,672,153. 5 stat points. Ability: Fire Release, Great Fireball, active, level 50 maxed, Uchiha Clan's staple jutsu. Burn your enemies alive with a continuous flamethrower or a massive ball of fire. Fireball: 200 fire damage with a 30% chance of inflicting the burn status, 100 CP per fireball. Flamethrower: 100 fire damage per second, with a 30% chance of inflicting the burn status, 50 CP per second. With multiple offshoot forms: Uchiha Interceptor Fist, passive, level 75 to 4.6%, is the main and fundamental taijutsu of the Uchiha clan. Each Uchiha has roots in this technique, which maximizes the use of the Sharingan to anticipate and counter enemy attacks and boosts Dex and STR by 25%. Intermediate Shurikenjutsu, passive, level 28 to 66.35%. You can consistently hit a target and are beginning to become reasonably accurate with your kunai and shuriken. The accuracy of thrown objects is increased by plus 45%, but it's more likely that you'll make the target a pincushion rather than hitting the same spot each time. Advanced Uchiha Style Kenjutsu, passive, level 30 to 31.95%. You have mastered the art of Uchiha Style Kenjutsu, and others can see that you have skill with the blade. Advanced sword fighting special moves are made possible by a plus 72 bonus to Dex and plus 51% STR when wielding a sword-type weapon, as well as a plus 57% effectiveness boost in blocking incoming attacks. The Ninja Get Out of Death card is Substitution Jutsu, active, level max. Shit to your enemies who believed you were dead. It costs 10 CP per use and lets you switch places with an object up to the weight of a large dog up to 15 times in a row to avoid an impending attack you are aware of. The Instant Disguise Kit is Transformation Jutsu, active, level 96 -21.4%. Although this genjutsu allows you to hide from your adversaries, it is extremely brittle and easily broken. It has the ability to change into someone who is 80 pounds lighter than you and only 3 feet taller. 15 CP per second. A very basic cloning technique, Clone Jutsu, active, level max, can create up to 19 clones per use, with 10 carbon monophosphide, clone. It produces illusionary clones that don't have any shadows or sound. The most basic Iryojutsu used by medical ninja is called Relaxation Technique, active, level max. It involves using one's chakra to relax the target, removing their fatigue and promoting chakra regeneration. It is not applicable to oneself. 20 carbon monophosphide per second, plus 140% chakra regeneration on target. Advanced Iryojutsu, passive, level 55 to 68.54%, congratulations. Without killing people for a living, you could be regarded as a doctor. You can now perform surgeries both in hospitals and on the battlefield with a higher success rate than failure rate. Minus 50% CP cost for Iryojutsu, plus 55% effectiveness for Iryojutsu. One of the fundamental healing jutsus employed by Konoha Ninja, Gentle Healing, active, level 50 MAX, is best suited for minor wounds and is not suitable for major ones. It costs 25 CP per second and heals 50 hydrogen phosphide per second. The primary ability of the gamer is Observe, active, level 75 to 54.97%, which allows you to view the statistics of nearby objects and people. 10 carbon monophosphide, use. During Sharingan Stage 3, active, passive, level 75 to 69.98%, you can use the so-called hacks power of the Naruto world to steal your opponent's jutsu by watching them make their hand seals and throw it back in their faces. You can also use it to predict their moves and even trap them in genjutsu using enemy ocular-based genjutsu. You can even see the future by predicting the movements of everything in your field of vision. Have fun, but be aware that opponents with enough speed can outwit you. For non-Uchiha, it is 25 carbon monophosphide per second. For Uchiha, it is 5 carbon monophosphide per second. Plus 51% dex when active. Elemental Kekkei Genkai and Hiden jutsus cannot be learned. Opponents' jutsu can be learned by observing how they form their hand seals. Activated Mystical Palm. Level Max. The standard Iryojutsu of medic shinobi worldwide, the Mystical Palm, is one of the most versatile Iryojutsu in use, including the Chakra Scalpel jutsu. It can be used creatively to damage your enemies or band heal your allies. One Medic 9 even noted that, "I can heal my enemies to death." Healing. 150 hydrogen phosphide per second, 5 carbon monophosphide per second. Damage varies according to usage. Chakra Scalpel, active, level max, is a common jutsu that both the medical community and interrogators have learned. It can only cut what the user wants to cut, including targeted organs, while leaving the skin unharmed. Various based on usage. By fusing the Chakra Scalpel jutsu with the Chakra Flow technique, this improvised method significantly increases its cutting ability on organic materials and gives the user the ability to select which organic material is cut. Chakra Flow. Chakra Scalpel. Active. Level 50 to 37.14%. Choosing which organic targets to cut and dealing plus 75 damage to them. The Sharingan. Genjutsu. Active. Level 33 to 63.98%, is an illusionary technique that uses the Sharingan as a medium. When the target looks directly into the user's eyes, the user can influence them. Higher levels can put their target into a hypnotic state, whereas lower levels can only create slight illusions. Chakra Flow. Neutral Chakra. Active. Level 42 to 0.00%, is a flexible method that many shinobi and samurai who wield weapons use to improve their weapons in combat. While different types of chakra can have different effects, neutral chakra only slightly increases damage and durability, 20 carbon monophosphide per second, plus 25 damage, plus 25% durability. Using Fire-Natured Chakra, Fire Release. Chakra Flow. Active, level 49 to 31.58%. Chakra Flow envelops the weapon in flames. Higher levels enable more control over the flames. Plus 50 to 250 fire damage. 50% chance of applying burning status to target. 5 Seals, Fire Release. Blazing Skull. Active, level 40 to 45.91%. Active, level 40 to 11.94%. 3 Seals, Water Release, Water Mantle. Benefits Sealmaster. Hey, they use the seal Biju from Fuinjutsu. Would you really want to fuck someone who has made that art their own? Bonus of plus 50% XP for Fuinjutsu. You've always loved the way light dances off a sword's edge, and some people even believe you like it even more when your enemy's blood is on it. That's my sword. Gaining 50% more experience in Kenjutsu. You don't fuck with the white mage, said Medic Nin. You destroy your enemy's organs and heal your friends. Now you just need to remember where you left your watch. Iryojutsu gains 100% express, but enemies will attempt to attack you first. Experience the burn. Fire has long been used to burn enemies to ash, drive predators away with its light, and warm people on chilly nights. When it comes to dealing with your adversaries, fire is your preferred weapon, you little pyro you. Start with natural fire affinity and use fire ninjutsu and nature manipulation to gain plus 50% express. Natural fire affinity. It's time to unleash your chakra's fiery energy and show the world how much it has always blazed. 15% off the cost of chakras for nature manipulation and fire ninjutsu. Natural water affinity. 15% chakra cost savings for nature manipulation and water ninjutsu. Gamer's body. 100% of your HP and CP are restored while you sleep, 75% in someone else's bed, 50% in a sleeping bag or tent, and 25% on the ground or in trees. Your body is, at least in part, that of a video game character. Gamer's mind. You have the mindset of an RPG player, so try to remain composed and make some sensible decisions. Although you can relax more readily, extreme emotional distress can still have an impact on you, so exercise caution. Minato-san had witnessed me at my weakest and most terrified, and he had supported me through it all. I ended up crying myself to sleep that night, and I don't think I could ever repay him for the quiet support he gave me. I never understood it myself, But I was beginning to feel the same way when I suddenly realized why so many people adored him as Hokage. When the sun started to peek over the horizon, I woke up with the others and showed them my stat page over breakfast. I used the points I earned from leveling up to increase my dex to 100 and my wis to 73. In fact, when I verified the modifications I made, a perk appeared. You have a new perk because your dex has reached 100. Fleet-footed, base speed, accuracy, and evasiveness are enhanced by plus 50%. Cool, huh? After I was able to raise my proficiency to the point where I could use them properly, I started discussing the various seals I applied to my clothes with Jiraiya-sama. I even took my jacket out of my inventory to demonstrate how it operated and to show Jiraiya-sama the seal work, which prompted him to make some notes. I was asking Minato-san questions about his Hiraishin jutsu while he was doing that, eagerly taking in everything he had to say. Based on his tone, it sounded like a hybridization of a wormhole and dematerialization. Although I couldn't understand many of the details, I did learn a few things that helped me, particularly about the Makas and his awareness of their existence. This led me to propose a seal that could be used to mark the location of a shinobi, which would then be transmitted to a map to enable real-time updates on the positions of allied troops. Although he took our diversion in good humor, Sandaime-sama had to raise his voice to get the three of us to stop arguing about how to best implement it in order to get us back on the road and moving. Being treated as an equal by these three strong shinobi and asked for my thoughts on current affairs and how certain jutsus would complement other jutsus was an unreal experience for me as a 9-year-old chunin. I remember laughing so hard at a story Minato-san told me about some of his past adventures with Jiraiya-sama and his former teammates that I ended up falling off a branch and landing face down on the ground. It was an experience I wouldn't trade for anything. After a week, we finally made it to the Tetsu no Kuni border. The air was getting colder, so we had to put on specially designed all-weather cloaks that used a small amount of our chakra to warm our bodies. I made a mental note to copy the seals onto my clothes out loud, much to Jiraiya-sama's amusement when he asked if I intended to wear more seals than clothes. My first encounter with the Tetsu no Kuni samurai was actually pretty uneventful. We just went to the border office, gave our names, affiliations, and purposes within Tetsu no Kuni, and were then granted entry with a single samurai escort. The escort was incredibly fast and was able to take us to the country's capital, where the meeting was to be held. When we arrived in the city, I couldn't help but stare at the different shops and buildings that lined the main street. Minato-san laughed and patted my head, which made me try to cover my blush with my cloak's high collar. For what reason did I discard my face mask? Wearing it made it much easier to conceal my embarrassment. The Tsuchikage delegation was reportedly on the other side of the city to make sure there would be no issues prior to the meeting, so we were escorted to the hotel to which we had been assigned. As we settled into the Diplomat Suites lounge, Sandaime-sama declared, "All right, now that we are here, we can talk about your roles." His words, "Minato, you are attending as my successor, and hopefully, deterrent to prevent Onoki from trying something foolish," garnered Minato's understanding nod. "Jiraiya, Yuriko-chan, you both are here as our bodyguards. I suspect you won't be needed, but better safe than sorry." My nervous swallowing was met with a pat on the back from Jiraiya-sama. He gave me a big smile and reassured me, "Calm down, kiddo. If we didn't think you could handle it, we wouldn't have brought you along. Besides, you managed to do pretty well against Minato when he wasn't holding back very much against you. If it does come down to it, you'll be fine." I swallowed again, absorbed some of the assurance he was expressing in me, and gave a firm nod, my eyes hardening as I readied myself for tomorrow's discussions. "Right," I said, taking a deep breath. "I can do this." Minato-san ruffled my hair and said, "Good to know," which made me squawk in outrage. "I'll be counting on your support then." How does he manage to make me blush so readily, man? Being the mature and professional 9-year-old chunin that I was, I threw a throw pillow at Jiraiya-sama's face after sending him a glare while he was laughing with delight at my blushing. As Sandaime-sama demonstrated his maturity by helping his struggling student, Minato-san sided with me against his evil teacher, starting the Great Pillow War of Tetsu no Kuni. It wasn't until I was lying in bed grinning broadly that I understood what the three of them were doing. They were assisting me in getting better. I had been fighting and healing non-stop for 2 years, and since combat-rated medics are very uncommon in Konoha, I had a lot of expectations placed on me, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Bless her heart, my mother did her best to support me, but she was just as burdened as I was, grieving for her husband while also helping her daughter deal with the loss of her father. There were no ifs or buts about my mother's strength. There were no jokes or amusing stories the following morning. Instead, We all went through our morning routines before putting on our full uniforms, making sure that every crease was in its correct spot. As we gathered in front of him at the hotel room door, Sandaime Sama gave each of us a close examination. Appreciating what he saw, he nodded his approval and left, politely greeting our escort and letting the samurai lead us to the main hall. Jiraiya-sama was to stand behind his teacher's right shoulder, and I was to sit behind Minato-san's left shoulder as he sat next to Sandaime Sama. The delegation of the Tsuchikage was waiting for us when we entered the main hall. Only the Tsuchikage appeared to be someone I knew. I fought the impulse to use my Sharingan after Minato-san clarified that since we can use Genjutsu by making eye contact with the Sharingan active, the samurai might interpret it as an aggressive act. When the Tsuchikage spoke up, it was even more difficult to resist that urge. Onoki sneered at me and growled, "Are you so desperate for soldiers that you're bringing a kid as one of your bodyguards, Hiruzen?" "Hardly," Sandaime Sama shot back, grinning slightly. "I brought her along because she is a highly capable kunoichi, although I am certain you already knew that given the bounty you put on her head. I was the target of a bounty." Both of my hands were clasped behind my back, and it took every ounce of my willpower to force myself not to stare in shock at the realization that I had a bounty. Well, at least that would explain why there were more people aiming at me in combat. An elderly-looking man sat between the two groups, and Onoki growled as Sandaime Sama slammed his attempted insult back in his face. As though we were sitting on a beach instead of between two groups of shinobi who were about to tear each other to pieces, he asked, "If you two are done bickering, may we get down to business?" "Old man, you are a badass." The two village leaders argued back and forth about who should get what, who should pay what, and how much X is worth during the meeting, which was ultimately a rather dull affair. Even though it was entertaining to watch Sandaime Sama turn every one of Onoki's jabs against him, I believe I did a fantastic job of maintaining my professionalism like Minato-san, as opposed to Jiraiya-sama, who was constantly insulting Onoki whenever the man became stubborn, which was frequently the case. After almost 12 hours of almost non-stop fighting, with only brief pauses for lunch and dinner, the ceasefire was finally signed, and both parties were preparing to depart. Onoki intended to speak to me once more at that point. He growled at me, clearly attempting to intimidate me and make fun of Sandaime Sama for bringing someone weak to the negotiations. "I look forward to the day you head lands on my desk, Uchiha brat," he said. "I'll take even more pleasure in gouging your eyes out for my shinobi. And I look forward to castrating each and every one of the assassins you send after me, bronzing their balls, and then having them delivered to you," I replied in my best, childlike, voice as I clapped my hands together. "You can start a collection with them," I said, glancing at Hokage-sama out of the corner of my eye, and he nodded, allowing me to speak for myself. The Tsuchikage sputtered in anger as his guards began to quickly escort him out of the room before he decided to attack me and enrage the samurai. After a brief period of silence, Jiraiya-sama began to belt out in laughter and clap me on the shoulder in approval as he bent over. "You are my hero, kid," between chuckles, Jiraiya-sama exclaimed. "Did you notice the fence-sitter's expression as he attempted to comprehend what you just said?" As we made our way to the exit that would lead to our hotel, Minato-san, who was far more composed, merely chuckled a little and patted my shoulder. "Well done, Yuriko-chan," he said approvingly. Not many would be willing to risk the Tsuchikage's wrath like that. What was wrong with me? I had never had this much difficulty talking to someone before, and I blushed in response, ducking my head as I attempted to cover my cheeks with the collar of my flak vest. "I was only able to do so because you all were here," I managed to mumble out. "All the same, Yuriko-chan, you managed to keep your calm before a superior shinobi as he tried to make you lose your cool and turned it back against him. Masterfully done," Sandaime Sama agreed. "Although, in the future I would recommend using less crass language. It is ill-becoming of a lady to speak like that after all." As my head dipped in acknowledgement, my blush deepened. "Yes, Hokage-sama," I said in a voice that was embarrassed. When we got to our hotel, Sandaime Sama said, "Shall we get some rest? It is going to be a long journey home, after all, but at least we came back with good news this time." The trip to Tetsu no Kuni was as enjoyable as the drive home to Konohagakure. I was particularly taken aback when all three of them began teaching me small tips here and there, such as Jiraiya-sama demonstrating to me how to make an explosive note sound more powerful with just a few brushstrokes. Sandaime Sama was a wealth of ninjutsu knowledge. He even initiated me on the second stage of nature manipulation training for both fire and water, which involved reversing the direction of a stream and setting a rock on fire, respectively. Minato-san also demonstrated how to compress my seals, making them smaller without sacrificing their effectiveness. It was weird, standing between Minato-san and Jiraiya-sama behind Sandaime-sama as we walked down Main Street to the Hokage Tower for the debrief. In contrast to our trip out, however, our return was met with a great deal of fanfare as the news of the ceasefire spread and many of the shinobi started to return home. Given who was standing around me, I was fairly certain that not many people noticed me, but I did see a few Uchiha in the crowd call my name and point me out to their fellows, which made me wave nervously in return. We soon arrived at the Hokage Tower's meeting hall, where I was told to stand next to Minato-san for the meeting rather than waiting outside as I had assumed. We then presented our report to the gathered clan heads, with Fugaku-sama giving me a curious glance as I stood next to the future Yondaime, and discussed our gains and losses as a result of the treaty that was signed. Questions were asked and answered, and one man who could only be Shikaku Nara asked me a question about conditions on the front lines with Tsunagaku. Fortunately, I was able to control my nerves about standing next to Minato-san long enough to respond to his question professionally, acknowledging that my knowledge might not be current. The questions eventually subsided, and Sandaime-sama threw out the various clan leaders, with Fugaku-sama stopping to give me one last thoughtful glance before heading out. Well, I would say that was a successful mission, wouldn't you? As he stood in front of his D-so in the chamber, Sandaime-Samantha asked cheerfully, Jiraiya, Minato, your assessments? That's the only thing left to cover. As Jiraiya-sama came forward, I blinked in bewilderment at his question. She remained professional throughout the meeting, kept her cool when the fence-sitter addressed her directly. She definitely has the skills, he listed, causing me to realize that they were evaluating me. With a bit more experience under her belt, she'll go a long way, I think. I agree with Sensei on all counts. She showed the necessary level of professionalism required. She is also well versed in tactics, collaboration techniques, and even political situations, Sandaime-sama said, nodding before turning to Minato-san, who took that as his cue. I blinked in confusion, totally disoriented by what they were discussing, and he concluded, I think she's ready for her promotion to Jonin. Well, that's what they were discussing. Hold on a minute. What? I asked in a deadpan tone while looking at Sandaime-sama, who grinned back. With a wry smile at my stunned expression, he said, well then, since you have the support of two of your commanding officers, I hereby approve your promotion to Jonin. Congratulations, Jonin Uchiha. We took the opportunity of the mission to Tetsu no Kuni to test to see if you were ready for a promotion. The Jonin commander at your last promotion forwarded a recommendation after you were forced to temporarily take control of the medic division when your mother was injured 3 months back, he explained. I remembered the day. That is not all, however, Jiraiya said, suppressing a smile. With my eyes widening as I realized where this was headed, Sandaime-sama told me, indeed, with me stepping down soon, Minato will be needing a set of guards he can trust with his life. I would like to offer the position as one of my bodyguards to you, Yuriko-chan, Minato-san said with a small grin on visage. You are young, yes, but you have length of potential for growth and I would be honored to have you at my side when I become Hokage. I started feeling dizzy. Minato-san wanted me to join his guard force. I agree, I accidentally yelled, unable to control my volume because I was so shocked. Minato-sama, the honor will be mine. He said with a smile, I look forward to working with you then, as a new alert appeared. Essential quest finished. Accompany the Sandaime Hokage to the Sandaime Tsuchikage's peace negotiations. Reward plus 15,000 reputation with Konohagakure, plus 5,000 reputation with Iwagakure, 25,000 experience points, and a promotion to Jonin. Bonus goal kept your composure while making the Sandaime Tsuchikage lose it, competed. Obtain a place in the Yondaime's guard, finished. Give your secret to Jiraiya, Minato Namikaze, and Hiruzen Sarutobi, finished. Reward plus 15,000 express and plus 5,000 reputation with Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato Namikaze, and Jiraiya. Plus 5,000 reputation with Jiraiya, Minato Namikaze, and Hiruzen Sarutobi, plus 15,000 express, and the Hokage's bodyguard perk obtained. Plus 15,000 express and plus 7,500 reputation with Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato Namikaze, and Jiraiya. Essential quest finished. Because of the war going on in the elemental nations, you were made a genin early. Protect your home and allies from invasion while ensuring your own survival. Goal: avoid destroying Konohagakure or any of your allies and live to the end of the Third Shinobi World War. Reward plus 25,000 experience points, plus 5,000 Konohagakure reputation, plus 2,500 allied nation reputation, and the War Veteran perk were obtained. Additional goals completed. Survive with your whole team. Obtain a spot in the bingo book, finished completed. Escort the Sandame to the signing of the treaty. Reward plus 1000 reputation with Jonin Sensei and your teammates, plus 5000 experience points. Plus 15,000 experience points, plus 5,000 Konohagakure reputation. Plus 15,000 express and plus 5,000 reputation with Hiruzen Sarutobi, Minato Namikaze, and Jiraiya. As I gazed at the pop-ups in front of me, my eyes began to itch a little. A big kid? Jiraiya-sama raised an eyebrow at me and asked. I stammered out, S7 levels, I've never had that big of a jump. Oh yeah, the quest of escorting the old man gave you that much. Jiraiya-sama smiled and blinked at me. He questioned me. I managed to explain, still looking in disbelief, and the bonus objectives, and the quest for surviving the war and its bonus objectives, before shaking my head and adding, also, I have a bingo book entry. With a small laugh, Sandame-sama took a small black book from his desk and threw it to me, giving me time to quickly scan it before I found my own entry. Bloody Scalpel Yuriko, Bounty with a B ranking. Official name. Uchiha Yuriko 9 years old rank, Shunin. Expertise. Iryojutsu, Kenjutsu. The most popular jutsu is the chakra scalpel technique's unique chakra flow. Warning. This technique is very lethal, even with a graze. Payable by Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Kirigakure, the bounty is 1 million ryo. Rating. Cautionary engagement. I said, gazing at the image they had chosen for my page, which showed me glaring away with an active Sharingan and covered in blood. That's something. Jiraiya-sama giggled as he pat. Welcome to the big leagues, kid. Chances are the fence sitter will probably bump it up a bit in revenge after the meeting, he said. But don't worry too much about it. Aside from the odd bounty hunter, not many will go out of their way to try and get you. Sandame-sama gently told me. Plus, you will be spending a lot of time in Konoha with your duties to Minato as the Hokage's bodyguard. Plus, I will be doing some training with you and your new squad, Minato-sama continued. There are a few techniques that I want you all to learn. A chance to learn from the Yondaime Hokage himself. Fuck yeah, I look forward to it, Minato-sama, he said, making my heart skip a beat. I said out loud, a little louder than I meant to, and he laughed. Very well then, you are dismissed for the rest of the day, Yuriko-chan, said Sandame-sama to me. Please report back here tomorrow morning to start your assignment. Indeed, Hokage-sama, I replied with a proud salute and a skip in my step as I walked out of the room. My gaming life can be terrible at times, but then days like today come along and everything gets amazing. Ah, Yuriko-san, welcome back. Heard you were part of Hokage-sama's guard retinue to Tetsu no Kuni, a guard yelled. Yes. I smiled at one of the guards and replied cheerfully. I even had the opportunity to discuss Fuinjutsu with Jiraiya-sama and Minato-sama during our journey. Oh no, his partner smiled at me and said, that must have been a really interesting conversation. Did you learn any useful tricks? As I described my experience, I was clearly excited. Minato-sama taught me about seal compression, Jiraiya-sama showed me how to enhance my explosive notes, and Sandame-sama actually taught me the next stage of nature manipulation training, I said. Plus I got to spar with Minato-sama, got completely destroyed in less than 2 minutes though. Well, before you head home, Fugaku-sama wanted to meet you at the main family building, the first one told me with a smile, not sure what he wanted to talk to you about, but he seemed pretty lost in thought. The two looked at me with a slightly perplexed expression before laughing in laughter at my rave. All right, I'll go over and see him now, I told the two of them as I entered the compound, remembering the inquisitive glances he had been giving me throughout the meeting. See y'all later. A lot of people greeted me as I passed through the district, and some of them stopped to talk to me for a while some of the shinobi called out to me. Eventually, I managed to reach the clan head of the Uchiha's house and knocked on the door. I stopped when a 4-year-old child opened the door, and his nose and tear tracks gave me a good idea of who this child was. Yes? Itachi Uchiha asked, her wide-eyed gaze fixed on me. How could he have been so adorable as a child? It took all of my self-control not to squeal with delight at the adorable expression on his face. Hello, is your father in? I smiled at the child and said, he asked me to come meet him. Itachi told me, okay, please come in, and then he stepped aside to let me in before rushing further inside the house. A short while later, a woman with dark hair entered. Makoto Uchiha smiled warmly and said, and you must be Yuriko-chan, welcome. Shiger-san has been boasting about you since you graduated. As I took off my heeled sandals, I blushed slightly in reaction to my mother's behavior. Thank you for welcoming me, I said to her. Is Fugaku-sama in? I heard you were on the guard detail for Hokage-sama's trip, so Makoto motioned for me to follow her. Of course, he's in his office, she said. Yeah, it was a very informative trip, I smiled in response, and I was able to learn a lot while traveling with them. Dude, that story is getting around, isn't it? You learned something from them, really? Makoto gave me a startled look as I smiled. Very little, but yes, Sandaime-sama truly assisted me with the second phase of my nature manipulation, I attested. As we approached a door, Makoto smiled back at me and said, "That's good to know," with a special look in her eyes. "Fugaku, dear, Yuriko-chan is here to see you." The head of my clan was sitting at a desk, slowly going through a pile of papers when I walked in. "Please, sit," he said, pointing to the chair across from him. "I just wanted to know about the trip you took with Hokage-sama." "Send her in." Fugaku's voice filtered through the door, and Makoto opened it, letting me in. I was a bit surprised that he wanted me to be a part of his detail, I explained, blushing slightly in embarrassment, tilting my head slightly as I sat down and answering him. Well, I think the entire thing was something of a test, because after the meeting, Hokage-sama promoted me to Jonin, I said cheerfully at the recollection, adding, I was also given my new posting assignment. Sorry, but I'm actually not sure if I'm supposed to talk about it yet, Fugaku-sama. That is fine, you don't need to tell me, he assured me, nodding in comprehension, understanding that a shinobi must maintain secrecy. What happened during the mission? Quote. Well, I sparred with Minato-sama for a bit, I replied with a smirk. I also talked with him and Jiraiya-sama about Fuinjutsu, and Sandaime-sama showed me the second stage of nature manipulation. With a thoughtful expression, Fugaku nodded. I understand. How is your training going? I understand that when you departed for the front at Kei's no Kuni, you were honing your Fuinjutsu. Yeah, I was working on clothing enforcement seals, mostly minor stuff right now, but with Minato-sama's help in showing me how to compress seals I should be able to improve them quite a bit, I replied with a smirk. Also, Jiraiya-sama taught me a few tricks to improve explosive notes, it was really helpful. What's up with your mom? He asked, scowling slightly as he processed what I had told him. She's coping, I replied with a confused face. My father's death had hit her hard, but she was kept busy on the front lines. Yes, as I understand it, she ended up having to take command of the medics there when the last commander ended up dying during an assault, Fugaku-sama said, glancing at me to confirm. Yes, Nobuyoshi Taicho was killed when an infiltrator managed to slip in during an attack on our base, I confirmed, squirming at the thought of that especially devastating attack. We were told that a replacement was going to be sent, but none ever arrived, so she ended up just staying in command with me as her second. The clan head complimented him, saying, quite the accomplishment from one your age. From what I understand, you have been working with the chakra scalpel a lot. I blushed slightly and fought the urge to cover my cheeks with the collar of my flak vest. Yeah, I kinda fell into it, to be honest, I said, adding, I ended up developing it further in combat. It's not exactly suitable for normal sparring matches. That's putting it lightly, Fugaku-sama said, grinning aridly at me. If I recall correctly some of the reports, you killed the assassin who killed the former medical commander by tearing his lungs apart with only a minor wound. As I explained the idea behind my main technique, Makoto-san returned with a tray of tea for us. Yes, the scalpel is mostly an exterior effect, I admit, but it is capable of affecting the internal organs without breaking the skin, I said, feeling a little more confident as I went along. So, I ended up experimenting when I was in the field and managed to come up with a few offshoot techniques to use with chakra flow. Chakra scalpel. Calmly sipping his tea, he told me, I must say, you are making impressive progress in your career, especially with taking such an often overlooked jutsu and turning it into a specialty of yours. Thank you, Fugaku-sama, I responded, bowing my head slightly. I had a lot of help with it though. My brother and father taught me a lot on the Uchiha Taijutsu and Kenjutsu, and my mother assisted me with a lot of the theory work for my jutsus. But you made use of those supports excellently, and managed to garner the attention of Hokage-sama himself, no small feat, he said with approval. With time and training, I'd wager you'd surpass Tsunade-sama. The truth was that Tsunade-sama was the best medic ninja in the world, bar none, and even if my mother, Saya Taicho, and I were to somehow team up, we probably wouldn't be able to match her abilities. I don't know about that, I said modestly, my cheeks burning from his compliment. Nonsense, you are Uchiha, and we do have a tendency to be overachievers when we put our minds to something. I couldn't help but laugh when he said that. As I understand it, your brother and mother are still out in the field, dealing with the last of the cleanup operations out there. Please, stay for dinner tonight. When he offered, I blinked and looked at Makoto-san, who gave me a supportive smile. "Ah, I'd be honored. Fugaku-sama," I said after a moment, "thank you for having me. It'll be ready soon," Makoto assured us as she smiled at us and left the room. I blinked, but I nodded in agreement and took a seat for the discussion. "So, why don't you tell me some more about the Kei's no Kuni front? I've read the reports and I would like to get your perspective on things," I said. It was an interesting experience to eat dinner with the main family. Fugaku-sama was a very strict person, but he had a dry sense of humor that was easy to miss if you weren't Uchiha or used to dealing with them. Makoto-san was a surprisingly vivacious woman who loved me and her son so much that it made us blush. Little Itachi-kun was, well, quiet most of the time. If the little winces he would try to hide when the topic was brought up were any indication, he had clearly seen the effects of what the war had done. It was clear that he was a bright child and objectively knew about snow and the weather, but it was still something else, apparently, to hear about a whole country covered by it. He did, however, eventually warm up to me, asking me questions about the places I'd seen, and his look of amazement when I told him about Tetsu no Kuni was absolutely adorable, especially when I told him about all the snow that had been on the ground. When I was lying in bed after dinner, I realized that Fugaku had planned a coup in the show's canon timeline. Was this meeting to see if I agreed with that sentiment, or was it something else? After dinner, I helped Makoto-san with the cleanup with only a minimal amount of protest, and the older woman only put up the barest resistance to my helping her. I groaned, turned over, and pushed those thoughts from my mind because there was nothing I could do right now and I had to turn in for my assignment the following day. As I prepared for my first official day as a jonin the following morning, I couldn't help but be giddy with anticipation. I stopped as I was getting dressed, reaching for my flak vest and tilting my head thoughtfully before opening my inventory and taking out the crimson chakra jacket and putting it on in place of the flak vest. It was still very early in the morning when I left, and the only people outside were the early riser civilians getting their shops ready for the day and fellow shinobi either heading to get their own assignment or returning home from theirs. I checked my reflection in my bedroom mirror, made a few adjustments to the fit, and then nodded in satisfaction before leaving. Jonin Yuriko Uchiha to see Hokage-sama, I informed the receptionist, who glanced over the appointment list and nodded, indicating that I was on my way to the office proper. I made good progress through the village, using the rooftops to avoid being stopped by the occasional civilian who wanted to talk to the passing shinobi. "Ah, just in time, come on in, Yuriko-chan," Sandame-sama said, beckoning me to join the other jonin. "Gentlemen, this will be the fourth member of your platoon. Yuriko Uchiha, Yuriko-chan, these will be your teammates. Reido Namiyashi, Genma Shiranui, and Iwashi Tatami." Sandame-sama welcomed me inside, while Jiraiya-sama and Minato-sama stood on either side of him. I bowed slightly to them and said, "Please look after me, senpais, with respect." "It'll be good to have a proper medic on the team," Genma Senpai said, rolling the senbon around his mouth. "It's nice to meet you." "Well, I'm not just a medic, you know," I told him proudly, causing the three to laugh. I responded with a slight smirk. Reido Senpai shuddered theatrically and told me, "I'm not going to argue that, considering what I've heard from the front lines." "Indeed," Sandame-sama replied, returning our focus to him. "Now, the four of you will be assigned to Minato in 1 week time when he is officially announced as my successor. For the next week you will be training with him to ensure that the four of you are able to work together. There is also a technique that I wish to teach to the four of you, a variant on the Hiraishin," Minato-sama continued, advancing. "The Flying Thunder Formation technique, when used properly, it will allow the four of you to teleport as one to a marker placed on a person, in this case, myself." I blinked in shock, then remembered that I had seen it on the show in a previous life. "Just to be sure, we aren't supposed to mention that we were given Minato-san in connection with his appointment as Yondaime, right?" Iwashi-senpai stepped forward and asked. "Correct, I'm sure there are already rumors of Minato succeeding me, but I would like it to remain that way," Sandame-sama asked. "Your new position will be obvious during Minato's inauguration next week." "You get it, Hokage-sama." We all saluted in response, and Sandame-sama nodded. Minato-sama smiled and stepped forward, saying, "All right, let's begin our training." In return, he received 4 nods of differing degrees of enthusiasm. The following week was exhausting, but in a good way. Minato-sama put us through our paces, drilling in different formations using the Flying Thunder formation. Since the technique requires 3 of us to use it, I was usually the 4th in the middle, ready to act when teleported. I had first met Kushina Uzumaki at this time, when I was going with Minato-sama to his and Kushina-san's house after he persuaded me to join them for dinner that evening. Kushina-san welcomed us as we entered, the woman halting as I nervously followed Minato-sama, who gave me a fierce look before abruptly holding me to the ecstatic Kushina-san who was swooning over me. She apparently found my professionalism adorable. Thank you very much, but I'm a deadly jonin, not cute. After that, I was greeted warmly at their house, and Kushina-san hurried me into the kitchen to sit down while she talked non-stop, hopping from topic to topic. Somehow, I was able to follow along with her and still managed to say something of my own. We ended up talking about something that all three of us found interesting, Fuinjutsu. So, you see, with a little adjustments to the array on the edges, that would allow the imprisonment jutsu to be remotely triggered instead of needing contact with the seal itself, Kushina-san said, rambling from the stove where she was cooking. I've been talking with the T&I guys and they're going to be running experiments with it to see if it is actually feasible for use. I sighed and groaned. It would actually be useful on the field as well. I remember when we were trying to capture a Kirigakure commander. Squirrely bastard kept slipping the bonds, adding, plus he was a Hazuka, so trying to keep a paper tag on him was almost impossible. I nodded, demonstrating to her that I understood what she was saying. Oh, describe it to me. With a sigh of agreement, Kushina said, even though I wasn't on the K's no Kuni front like you were, I did face one in Kusa no Kuni was a bastard to pin down. She then took the pot off the stove and set it on the table so I could see what she had been cooking, and I'm not sure why, but it was ramen. But dinner is ready. I was actually a little embarrassed to admit that I had never eaten ramen before coming here, and to Kushina-san's stunned surprise, I did so for the first time that evening with Minato-sama and Kushina-san. I was so embarrassed by my loud belch from eating too fast that I practically inhaled my first bowl of noodles without even realizing it. I genuinely fell in love with the dish from the very first bite. After dinner, I assisted the redhead in cleaning up by washing the dishes. Thank you for dinner, Kushina-san, I said. It was delicious. It was ramen, of course. I must admit, I was a little taken aback when Minato-kun told me about you, Yuriko-chan, Kushina-san said with a broad smile. I stopped, my face getting a little hot, and my eyes widened. Minato-sama mentioned me. When I squeaked out in surprise, Kushina-san giggled and her violet eyes took on a knowing expression. Yes, I knew I had to meet you as soon as he informed me that you would be joining his guards, and I have to say, you are the cutest jonin ever. I'm not cute, Kami dammit, she exclaimed, making me blush with admiration. Even Kakashi-kun wasn't as cute as you were when he first turned into a jonin. I tried to reply, I'm nothing special, but the redhead got off before I could finish. I shuffled a little. You are, of course, Obito-kun was as modest as you are, so you must be related, she told me, making me freeze, realization filling me. I forced my body to continue moving as I pushed down the knowledge that I failed to prevent the creation of Toby. Your family is still deployed, correct? Yeah, I got word that they'll be back the day before the inauguration, I told her, smiling, but I have to admit, the house kind of feels empty without them around. I nodded in agreement, grateful for the diversion from the subject I was contemplating. All right, that resolves the matter. You will remain here until they return. Minato-kun, prepare the guest room. Kushina-san yelled at me, causing me to blink and glance up at the elderly woman. I figured you'd say that, it's already prepared for her, Minato-sama assured Kushina-san, laughing at his fiancée's or girlfriend's enthusiasm. Surely he'll save me from whatever horrible thing Kushina-san had planned, he said. That means I get to dress up with Yuriko-chan tomorrow, which is fantastic, Kushina joyfully declared. A traitor, you Minato-sama. I couldn't help but feel warm as the two welcomed me into their home without any reservations, regardless of what my conscious mind was telling me. I'll keep them safe. Since I adore them. My mother exclaimed, Yuriko-chan, as she hurried up to embrace me tightly, which I gladly returned with equal vigor. Sakari Ni-san came up soon after, grinning at me over our mother's shoulder. Are you all right? Were you injured on the mission? Did everything go all right? When my mother asked me a series of quick-fire questions, I laughed and reassured her by patting her on the back. I reassured her, yes, I'm fine, Mom, with warmth. I wasn't injured and everything went as smoothly as it could have. I was even promoted. When my mother finally withdrew, she grinned at me and exclaimed, I heard about that, and I think you grew another couple of inches on me, young lady. My brother came up and ruffled my hair, and I blushed back. He laughed as he told me, hey a squirt, heard you pissed the Tsuchikage off something fierce at the meeting. He was throwing threats around and I told him that I would enjoy sending him the brass balls of his assassins back to him, I replied while grinning. I did also suggest he could start a collection of them. While my mother gaped at me, my brother began to laugh. Yuriko Uchiha, Who taught you how to talk like that? She asked angrily. I returned her glare with one of my own. You did when we were attacked by that Iwa-nin. My mother made a sound after blinking. She said dismissively, oh, that's all right then, which caused my brother and I to burst out laughing once more. I was glomped by Chika-chan as she said, Yuriko-chan. A body struck me from behind, causing me to stumble a little under her weight. I've missed you so much, are you okay? I heard you got promoted again. Did you really escort Hokage-sama to the ceasefire signing? Aoi-kun, who appeared less tense than when he was on the field in Kei's no Kuni, said, don't think she can say anything with you continually questioning her there, Chika-chan, with Hisai-sensei following closely behind. I laughed and gave my friend a hug in return. I missed you too, Chika-chan, I said. And yes, I did get promoted. Congratulations then, Yuriko, Hisai-sensei said, grinning proudly at me. You earned it after Kei's no Kuni. Thank you sensei, I said with a smile. What about you two and your snazzy new vests? When I asked my two friends to adjust the Chunin vests, they responded with a bright smile. We received a promotion shortly after your departure, Aoi-kun clarified. Hopefully this means we can start going on higher ranked missions together again. I couldn't keep the two of them from seeing me wince. I wish I could guys, but I'm not sure how often I will be able to, I said, grinning pityingly at them. I was given a new posting to go with my new rank, sorry. Chika-chan and Aoi-kun both had dejected expressions on their faces, but Hisai-sensei nodded sympathetically. Chika-chan brightly said, well, I guess we'll just have to look forward to when we can go on missions together again, in an attempt to lift the somewhat sour atmosphere that had settled over us. Ni-san stated, I'm sure you'll get your chance eventually, as he moved forward. Now, how about we all go out and celebrate all of your promotions, it'll be on me. As we walked toward one of the Akamichi's restaurants, picking up more friends and allies along the way, the rest of us laughed when Aoi-kun boldly exclaimed, well, I hope you're ready for us to eat you out of house and home then. Before Sandaime-sama became the first Hokage in history to actually retire and pass the symbolic hat onto Minato-sama, who was now wearing his signature white cloak, Minato-sama recited his pledge to protect the village from all threats, both internal and external, and I could feel my chest swelling with pride as I stood at attention behind him on top of the Hokage Tower, in front of the entire village, with civilians milling in the streets below and shinobi assembling on the rooftops. Then Iwashi-senpai, Rado-senpai, and Genma-senpai all came forward together and knelt down to Minato-sama. Rado-senpai was very adamant about the Hokage's guard oath, which we recited with practiced ease. We swear, as loyal shinobi of Konohagakure and Hai no Kuni, we shall serve the Yondaime Hokage until death or our services are no longer required. We shall be your sword and shield, to be used as you see fit and guided by your hand alone. Following the recitation of those words, Sandaime-sama's Hokage guard members symbolically passed on a ninjutsu, indicating that we were the new Hokage's guardians while they continued to protect the old. The weapons were merely ceremonial and of a ceremonial nature, not that they weren't functional. Minato-sama stood over them, the wind blowing at just the right angle to catch his cloak, letting it billow around him as the wind carried leaves in front of him, and the crowd roared in response as the ceremony came to an end. Standing at attention behind him, I let myself smile because I knew I belonged there and felt like I belonged. Before Kushina-san, who was now displaying signs of her pregnancy with Naruto, completely destroyed my professional image, my mother and brother, who had been invited to the Namikaze household to participate in the celebrations of Minato-sama's inauguration as the Yondaime Hokage, smashed into me and gushed excitedly about how cute I looked up there between the adults. When I pathetically objected for the 100th time that I was a professional kunoichi and not cute, my brother collapsed in laughter and my mother's mouth fell open. However, to the amusement of the other guests, my mother joined Kushina-san in completely embarrassing me, which only served to shake her out of her shock. It was a fun night that I would always remember with a smile on my face because I laughed with my brother while my mother humiliated my senpais in arm wrestling. As they dragged me away to play dress-up, I struggled against my mother's and Kushina-san's wailing and yelled for someone to save me. However, I was able to persuade them to drag a stunned Kakashi into the mess, which also happened to be my first encounter with the teenage genius. In the pink dress that my mother and Kushina-san made him wear, he looked cute and gave me a death glare. When I went outside for some fresh air toward the end of the night, Jiraiya-sama was intoxicatedly singing a vulgar sailor's song to the delight of all. "You're really growing up fast there, Squirt," my brother said quietly as he sat down next to me on the swinging bench that was set up on the porch in the backyard. I felt a presence next to me and turned to see him standing there with a warm smile on his face. Becoming a member of the Hokage's guard platoon is a pretty big step. How you feeling about it? He put an arm around me, and I smiled back, leaning into him. I feel ready for it, I said, briefly closing my eyes to bask in the warmth of my brother's company. It's difficult to explain, but I truly want to protect Minato-sama, I said, feeling a little hot on my cheeks. I mean, I know he's incredibly strong and smart, and I'm just a kid who's gotten lucky to have gotten a few things right for myself, but whenever he looks at me, it feels like he's looking at an equal, and it makes me feel really happy inside and like my heart wants to break out of my chest and I don't know why. And with a finger on my lips to silence me, my brother interrupted me. Because you love him, he said knowingly, causing my eyes to widen as I stared up at him in shock. We Uchiha Arena known for doing things by half measures, and that goes doubly true for our emotions. When we love we do it with our entire being, and when we hate we feel it down to our toes. It is the source of our greatest strength, and our greatest weakness. I saw him reach for the glass he had placed on the wicker coffee table next to him, missing his first attempt to grasp it despite staring at it, and then succeeding on his second attempt. I got to my knees and put a glowing hand on each side of his head, asking him worriedly, "How bad is your eyesight?" He responded with a grimace. He responded, about halfway gone almost, which gave me permission to use my healing chakra on him even though he was aware that it wouldn't improve his vision. I think the rate has been increased a bit since I learned how to completely manifest the Susanoo. In response, I scowled deeply as I frantically searched for a way to use my chakra to restore his vision. I frantically said, "There must be a way to restore your eyesight," as I stopped the chakra's flow. I mean, we know Madara had the Mangekyo since he was only just a few years older than me and he never went blind. My brother grimly said, "There is only one way to restore the sight taken by the Mangekyo Sharingan," and I could feel my heart tightening because I knew what he was going to say. By transplanting the eyes of a direct blood relative who has unlocked the Mangekyo Sharingan into your own. I told him, regardless of whether the others could hear, "Then, we just need to trade eyes if I unlock mine then." My brother gave a headshake. "That doesn't work, Yuriko-chan," he calmly informed me. "It just makes the rate of decay worse. The eyes must be directly implanted into the recipients. One must sacrifice their sight forever for the other to regain theirs. There must be a way to avoid that. If I research it then maybe." He interrupted me and gave me a tight hug. "Yuriko-chan, thank you, but I have already come to terms with it," he said. "And I decided that if the day comes and you experience enough grief that you awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan, I will give up my light so that your will continue on." The only thing I could manage to say between choking sobs was, "Oh Oni-san," and I responded by giving him a tight hug. He whispered, "I love you, little flower," into my ear. His nickname for me prior to my admission to the academy made me cry even more. "Even when you were just a child and had no idea what you had done, you shone a light into my life when it was the darkest, and that is why I am willing to sacrifice it for your light." He remained there the entire night, and Kushina-san showed me a photo of my brother and I sleeping on that swinging bench, with me resting on his chest. I'm not sure how long I sobbed into his shoulder before I passed out in his arms. However, that picture is still on the nightstand next to my bed, framed and shielded by the strongest seals I could make, so I can always see my brother's love for me when I wake up. In the beginning, I served as Minato-sama's personal assistant. I would get there a little early each morning to help him arrange his daily schedule before assisting him in sorting through the numerous non-essential mission reports that came in during the night and were put on his desk by the on-duty Anbu after making sure nothing hazardous was hidden inside. I would remind him of crucial meetings throughout the day and accompany him to all but the most high-level classified meetings, taking notes for him on anything he might have overlooked that I could discuss with him privately later. That changed 4 months after Minato-sama was appointed Hokage. Kushina-san was in her 5th month of pregnancy, and I was tasked with taking care of her and the unborn child while Kakashi shielded her from any physical threats that might endanger her. Since Minato-sama wanted me available at all times in case something went wrong, I had essentially taken over their spare bedroom during this time. His excessive protectiveness both irritated and delighted Kushina-san, but she loved that it allowed her to throw my 10th birthday party at her house, with my mother helping with all the setup and chasing Kakashi and I out of the house. All of my friends and acquaintances gathered in the Namikaze home to celebrate my 10th birthday, so the evening of June 21st was quite noisy. A full set of formal kimonos from Saya Taicho, a set of Uzumaki sealing scrolls from Kushina-san, who claimed that her family would detest the idea of wasting them sitting around collecting dust, and everything in between were among the many gifts that were given. Nevertheless, I could still feel the dreaded day approaching, the day the masked man would arrive and leave young Naruto-kun an orphan. In the back of my mind and the pit of my stomach, I threw myself into my training, sparring frequently and consistently against Kakashi, who appeared to be in need of the outlet himself and was trying to assist me by creating new seals, because I would not allow such a thing to occur. The marker seal, which I had discussed with Jiraiya-sama and Minato-sama during our trip to Tetsu no Kuni so long ago, was the most noteworthy seal I made. Like Minato-sama did with his Hiraishin, the seal enabled me to mark people. Once I had done so, I could follow their signature up to 10 miles away in any direction, and after some practice, I could even determine their physical condition as long as they were in that area. When we used the Flying Thunder formation, I was able to more accurately guide Rado Senpai, Genma Senpai, and Iwashi Senpai thanks to those markers. In order to move Kushina out of Konohagakure in secret in case the worst happened and Minato-sama was unable to properly reinforce her seal, plans were made as the day drew near. This way, the Kyuubi would be far enough away to give the villagers some warning. I was there to help Sandaime-sama's wife with the birth, and although I acknowledge that this was my first time attending a birth of any kind, I was much more preoccupied with trying to detect the masked man's approach and ensuring that Naruto-kun was emerging from Kushina-san safely than I was with feeling amazed or repulsed by the entire event. Bawako-san took the baby to be cleaned and wrapped in a towel after I cut the umbilical cord for him. I reassured the two parents, who sagged and sighed in relief, "He's perfectly healthy," just before I experienced a sudden, intense pain in my kidney. Following the startled gazes of Kushina-san and Minato-sama, I looked down and saw the business end of a standard issue ninjutsu impaling me. A moment later, I was thrown sideways by Obito Uchiha, who was now threatening the life of little Naruto-kun. No. Even though my vision started to blur from the extreme pain, I mentally screamed as Minato-sama started fighting the masked man, frantically attempting to push the weapon out of my body. My hands, glowing with healing chakra, flew to my stomach as I tried to heal the wound as quickly as possible, hoping that if I was quick enough, I could still save them before the Kyuubi was released. I let out a strangled gasp when I finally succeeded. I was almost done dressing my wound when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Then, the now familiar dizziness of Minato-sama's Hiraishin took over, and I found myself in the middle of the wood, with Kushina-san lying on an altar covered in seals and appearing incredibly frail. "Kushina-san!" I exclaimed, putting my healing chakra on her while ignoring my partially healed wound to hurry to her side. With a desperate gasp, she turned to Minato-sama, who grinned and teleported the three of us to one of the safe houses where Naruto was waiting. "And Naruto-kun," she began. Kushina-san exclaimed joyfully, "Oh, my baby," as Minato-asa held him in her arms. As I concentrated all of my energy on attempting to save Minato-sama's life, I hardly noticed when she disappeared in a flash of yellow. No, I can't allow this to occur. I can't allow Naruto-kun to grow up by himself. I bit my bottom lip so hard that blood came out as I screamed at myself in my head, trying desperately to mend the wound that Kushina-san had sustained, which was completely beyond my capacity to do so. The cold realization filled me, and I couldn't stop the tears from streaming out of my eyes. I turned to face Kushina-san, who was grinning warmly at me, when I felt a soft, warm hand on my cheek. "Yuriko-chan, look after Naruto-kun for me, okay?" she asked, causing my eyes to widen as I attempted to shake my head in denial of the circumstance. As I attempted to channel more healing chakra into the extremely loving and kind person in front of me, I cried out, "No, I can save you. I have to save you, please. You can't die, Kushina-san." Why am I not strong enough? Kushina-san gave me a pitiful smile and said, "Because sometimes, we just never are strong enough," before turning to face little Naruto-kun. "Keep him safe for me," she pleaded. "Be there for him where I can't be." I closed my eyes and gave a feeble nod, not believing I could speak before choking back a sob. Before I felt something being placed on the back of my neck and lost control of my limbs, Kushina apologetic whispered, "I'm sorry, Yuriko-chan. You really are adorable. But, I can't have Naruto-kun's big sister dying because she decided to do something foolish," Kushina said. I asked feebly, "Kushina-san?" as I gazed betrayedly at the red-haired woman I had grown to love. Her sad smile with tears in her eyes was the last thing I saw before I passed out. My partially healed wound tore open slightly at the hurried motion, and I gasped as I jerked awake, fully controlling my limbs as I ran to my feet, ignoring the pain in my stomach. I heard a child screaming and yelled, "No, Kushina-san! Minato-sama!" as I fled the tiny safe house. Ignoring my burning wound, I followed the cries to a ruined area where I discovered Naruto-kun sobbing in front of Kushina-san and Minato-sama's lifeless bodies. When Sandaime-sama arrived on the scene, he saw me crying over the bodies of the Yondaime and his wife, and his horrified expression matched my agonized cries. I had never experienced loss and failure like I did on that day. I discovered the bitter sense of powerlessness that comes with being a member of my clan. I understood the significance of obtaining the Mangekyo Sharingan. As Shigure Uchiha busied herself in the kitchen, she thought that the kami appeared to share their sorrow with Konohagakure. 5 days have passed since the Kyuubi was let loose on Konoha, and the rain and dark clouds have not stopped, adding to the destruction brought about by the Yondaime and his wife's deaths. Although she had come to like the red-haired Uzumaki woman and could understand why her daughter was in love with her and her husband, she was unable to console her daughter despite this knowledge. She glanced down the corridor to her daughter's room. As soon as she got back from the hospital yesterday, the upset girl barricaded herself in the room. Her worried squadmate Genma dropped her off, telling Shigure to contact any of them if Yuriko needed anything. The fact that her daughter had such dependable friends warmed the mother's heart, and she knew her daughter would need them. This was especially true when the Sandaime visited and described how he discovered her sobbing over their bodies, a barely healed and returning wound in her stomach. And as she shed bloody tears, a 5-petaled flower took the place of her Sharingan. Shigure was deeply shaken by the news and started to question why her children were destined to carry the strong bloodline's evolution while neither she nor their father had. She turned her back on the door, which would not open even when she placed food in front of it, and sighed as she peered into her son's empty room. In an effort to buy more time for Konohagakure ninja and evacuation efforts, he tried to use his Kashinto to teleport the Kyuubi away while leading a company in a counterattack on the creature. He had managed to push it back 30 feet, and the effort had almost killed him from chakra exhaustion. He remained unconscious to the outside world in the hospital, constantly monitored to make sure his attempts to defend the village didn't kill him. More Uchiha had done the same, with clan head Fugaku-sama motivating the clan's combat-capable members to take action while some of the less experienced members hurried into the actual village to direct civilians into the different shelters. She was interrupted from her thoughts by a knock on the door as she was about to respond, blinking in surprise to see a sullen-faced Jiraiya standing there. "Jiraiya-sama," she said, bowing respectfully to the Sannin. "Please, come in, may I get you some tea?" He said, "Sorry, Shigure-san, this isn't exactly a social call," while wearing a dejected expression. "How is she?" Shigure turned back to her daughter's room and winced. She hasn't been eating, hasn't said a word, or even come out of her room," she replied, holding back her tears by biting the inside of her cheek. "I tried to get in, but I think she sealed her room off." Jiraiya gave a sympathetic nod. He scowled deeply as he acknowledged, "Unfortunately she needs to report to the Hokage on the incident. A lot of questions are being asked, and she is the only survivor who can actually be questioned." Shigure screamed. "My daughter would never harm the Yondaime or his wife." Her motherly rage overcame any remaining sadness. She loved them more than anyone else in this village. She would kill herself before bringing harm to them. Jiraiya comforted her by patting her shoulder and saying, "I know," which helped her to relax, as does Sensei and many on the council, but as it stands, she is the only one who could have seen what may have happened. Shigure sagged and sighed with a shudder. She begged, "Please, Jiraiya-sama, keep her safe," as she moved aside to let the Sannin into her house. Jiraiya swore solemnly as he followed the mother to the door of her daughter's room. "You have my word," he said. "Yeah, she's definitely put up a seal on this," Jiraiya remarked, delicately passing a chakra pulse through the door with his hand. "An Uzumaki seal if I'm not mistaken." Then he rapped loudly on the door. He yelled, "Yuriko, Sensei needs you to report in a kind but formal manner, and your posting isn't done." Shigure forced herself to hold back from rushing forward to embrace her daughter after hearing some shuffling through the door before it opened. As she gazed listlessly at Jiraiya, Yuriko's once tidy hair was a tangled mess, and her eyes, which had once been full of life and happiness, were puffy with dark circles surrounding them. She didn't look like the happy person she usually was. Her once vibrant voice was a hollow shell of its former self as she croaked, "What mission? I failed it, I couldn't save them, they're dead because I wasn't strong enough." As her daughter spoke, Shigure felt her heart tighten. She gritted her teeth and tried to stop herself from rushing forward once more. This was the most she had let anyone get out of her since the Sandaime had dropped her off. Jiraiya's daughter twitched when she said, "So, you're just going to leave their killer running free without doing anything? And what about Naruto? The child you helped bring into this world that night? Are you just going to leave their child abandoned?" Yuriko's eyes flashed angrily in response to that. Anger rising in her listless voice, she retorted, "And what about you? You're his godfather, why not you? Why not Kakashi? He's Minato-sama's student." Jiraiya calmly and patiently endured her rage. "If I could, I would in a heartbeat," he exclaimed to her. "But you know how many enemies Minato had. They would instantly suspect any blonde child with me as the Minatos. Kakashi wouldn't be much better, not to mention he's emotionally stunted and retreated into the Anbu Corps as soon as the dust settled. If anyone were to be able to take in Minato and Kushina's son, it has to be you. To the other countries, you were just a pet project for him. A way to show unity in the village. They wouldn't think twice about a blonde kid in your presence." Jiraiya's words caused Yuriko to recoil, but the Sannin didn't give her time to gather herself before yelling at her once more. "You are the only one who witnessed what transpired that evening. The only one who can lead us to their killer," he exclaimed, raising his voice inadvertently. "Or are you not wanting to bring the one responsible to justice?" Jiraiya held an arm in front of Shiger, preventing her from hurrying to her daughter's side as Yuriko squirmed once more and folded up on herself slightly as tears fell to the ground. As if to challenge her, he asked in a low voice, "Jonin Yuriko Uchiha, are you shirking your duty to Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki?" "Never," Yuriko spit out so forcefully that the two adults recoiled in shock as the first Uchiha to be appointed to the Hokage's guard platoon rose to her feet, her eyes blazing with a resolve that destroyed any room for doubt. Jiraiya said, "Good," with a firm voice and nod. "Make yourself presentable, Sensei summoned you to make your report." Yuriko nodded and said, "Yes, Jiraiya-sama," as she retreated to her room, with Shiger running in after her as the white-haired Sannin in the hallway gave a shuddering breath. As he waited, he whispered to himself, "It must be you, child. You're about the only one who can properly protect Naruto now." After lying in bed for days, not even having the energy to cry, it was difficult to force myself to move. As my mother straightened my neglected hair and I put on the standard Jonin's uniform for the upcoming meeting, I moved anyway, letting her help me get presentable and trying my best to absorb some of her strength as my own. I muttered, "Sorry," as my mother finished combing my hair in her typical straight style, "for making you worry, for not being there." With her hands on my shoulders and her forehead resting on my scalp, my mother whispered into my ear, "It's okay, I understand, you love the two of them so much, it's only natural for you to be depressed." Slowly, I nodded while fighting back tears and taking another look at how I looked. I whispered to her, "I need to get going," and gave her a brief hug before releasing her. "I'll be back as soon as I can be." My mother nodded, wiped away a few tears of her own, gave me the warmest smile she could manage, kissed my forehead tenderly, and let me go with Jiraiya-sama. When I forced myself to follow Jiraiya-sama out onto the rooftops, my body screamed at me, but I ignored it as the Sannin updated me on the village's situation and my brother's condition in the hospital, where he was barely surviving. At that news, the devious parts of my mind told me that I should have been there to help him, that I should have avoided the need for it from the start, and a stab of guilt ripped through me, adding to the ever-increasing pile. As we reached the Hokage's tower, a structure that had seen better days but still stood as a symbol of Konoha, I shook my head to get rid of those thoughts and concentrated on the task at hand. Jiraiya-sama led the way through the building without stopping us, and we quickly arrived at the council chamber, where the Hokage sat behind his desk and the entire council, minus a few members, was in session. Sandaime-sama graciously said, "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Yuriko-chan," and as I stood at attention, I forced myself to suppress another wave of guilt at the sight of the Hokage's hat. As the only survivor, you are the only one we can turn to that can answer what happened that night with the Yondaime and his wife. Before I could answer, I took a deep breath. Everything had been going according to plan, I said, trying to sound professional, but I could hear my voice breaking. But, as soon as the child was born, Bawako-san was killed and I was stabbed from behind, I choked up. The man who attacked us had gotten a hold of the Yondaime's son. He was wearing a gray right-eyed mask with black markings on it, and I caught a glimpse of a Mangekyo Sharingan. As the other council members started to stir in an uncertain member, Fugaku-sama exclaimed in shock, "What, can you describe it, or recognize it if seen?" I closed my eyes and licked my lips a little. As accurately as I could, I reported, "I only saw one Sharingan, but the one I saw was like a three-pointed shuriken with lines connecting the three blades. If I had some paper I could draw it." Jiraiya swiftly brought out a pen and a sheaf of paper so I could begin sketching it. I must admit, I am suspicious if he really is Uchiha though, whether an active or bastard child, I added as I drew the Sharingan. Obito was able to do so much damage because no one knew about him until it was too late. He might have targeted a clan member who had only just awoken theirs and stole it. Sandaime-sama nodded when I handed him the paper, and Fugaku-sama scowled and looked it over. He declared, "Her idea holds merit," and closed his eyes. We keep a record on all who awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan along with making an image of the design it takes. That is not one that I recognize. Visibly worn out, Shikaku Nara asked, is it possible one of your clan members would hide such a thing? Looking at Sandame-sama, who gave a grim nod, Fugaku-sama reported, possible, but extremely unlikely, as Sandame-sama can attest, having seen the awakening of Yuriko-sans. The user will be crying tears of blood for a period of time afterwards, and it only awakens after a traumatic event that leaves the victim with overwhelming feelings of guilt. Most users end up committing suicide shortly after from their grief. Inoichi Yamanaka asked me gently, can you show us your own? Which caused me to blink and turn to face him. I must admit to my own curiosity, but many of us have never seen it before. I inhaled, nodded, and then activated my Sharingan. As I focused, I felt a sharp pain in my eyes as the world, for want of a better term, changed. Everything was more defined and clear, and I could see the council's every move as they moved. In addition, I could sense their potential, and as the Mangekyo activated, the information filled my head. My right eye was inhabited by Kamiyonaneo, 7 generations of the Age of Gods, a localized space, time ninjutsu that twisted time to replicate any ninjutsu I used up to 7 times, exactly as it had been activated initially. Ama no Yukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven, another space, time technique that would enable me to distort the trajectories of any ninjutsu within my field of vision, was also visible in my left eye. I blinked, turning off my Sharingan entirely, and staggered a little. Jiraiya-sama and, ironically, Fugaku-sama jumped to my side, supporting me as the surge of energy left my body, making me feel a little lethargic. As you become more accustomed to it, the deactivation won't leave you feeling weak, Fugaku-sama reassured me in a quiet voice while gesturing for a chair to be brought to me. His eyes flashed the Mangekyo Sharingan, a thinner, mirrored version of Itachi's with a dot between each blade, to show me before it faded, and I blinked up at him in surprise as he responded with a tight smile. I tried to ask him about it, but he interrupted me with another statement. Fugaku-sama returned to his council seat and declared, although it bestows an amazing amount of power, it comes at a terrible cost in addition to the activation event. The more we use the Mangekyo Sharingan, the more we lose our eyesight. With a cunning expression in his eyes, a man I didn't recognize asked, is it possible to repair the damage? Not with Iryojutsu, I confessed, glancing down at my hands as the memory of using my Mangekyo caused my eyes to pound a little. My brother, Sakari-ni-san, has it, and his eyesight has been getting worse lately. I tried everything I could to fix the damage short of surgery, but I couldn't even find any indication of damage to his eyes. What she says is true, acknowledged Fugaku-sama. There is only one way we know of to repair the damage, and the only one to use it was Madara, and he had stolen his brother's eyes, leaving him for dead in order to restore his sight and evolve it to the ultimate form of the Sharingan. He choked up and closed his eyes. We have made attempts to find a way around it, volunteers stepping forward to trade their eyes, but they don't work. The only way is to implant the eyes of a close blood relative into your own. Simply put, troublesome, said Shikaku-san. Sandame-sama gave a nod of approval. He asked me, Yuriko-chan, you heard what your brother did for Konoha, correct? And I nodded. As the one who is the most familiar with how much of his sight was lost beforehand, how much do you think he lost from his attempt to defend Konoha? I responded by swallowing hard. I think he might wake up without his sight, I finally said after attempting to speak for a few moments. And if he hasn't, then any more usage of it will render him blind. A number of the council members bowed their heads in agreement, and Sandame-sama nodded in agreement. With your permission, Hokage-sama, I would like to move him into the military police instead of active duty, Fugaku-sama said. I think he's sacrificed enough already for the defense of Konoha. Sandame-sama nodded and said, as soon as we're done here, I will have the papers sent to you. All in favor of rating this masked individual as an S-ranked threat to be exterminated on sight? All of the council members grimly said, aye, up. Very well, I shall have the bingo books updated as soon as possible, he said. You are all dismissed. Yuriko-chan, Jiraiya, can you both please remain? As the council members started to leave the council chambers one by one, Fugaku-sama nodded and took a moment to give me a surprisingly encouraging shoulder pad before heading out. I approached Hokage-sama and asked, how may I serve, Hokage-sama? How are you feeling, Yuriko-chan? He asked me softly, gesturing for me to calm down. His eyes were sad as he examined me, and he could undoubtedly see the signs of my guilt and grief that have been bothering me. With Jiraiya-sama supporting me with his hands on my shoulders and tears streaming down my cheeks as I let go of my emotional control, I sagged a little. As I looked into his worried eyes, I confessed, Hokage-sama, I'm just so tired. He stood up and nodded in comprehension. A cat-masked Anbu saluted him as we entered his office proper, which had a small crib set up. I think, before you go home and rest, there is someone you should meet, he said, with the two older shinobi leading me there. Yuriko-chan, please, meet Naruto Uzumaki-kun. I bit back a choked sob as I gazed into the crib and saw the sleepy, whiskered face of Kushina-san's son and Minato-sama. I blinked. I whispered, "Oh, Naruto-kun," and tentatively reached in to lightly touch his cheek. The child stirred slightly as his gorgeous blue eyes opened up, gazed at me, then gurgled joyfully and grinned. Little Naruto-kun was grinning up at me and babbling as Sandaime-sama and Jiraiya-sama urged me to pick him up, but I was unaware that the rain that had been falling on Konoha had interrupted that moment. All I knew was that I was falling in love again at that very moment, crying softly as I gave the baby Jinchuriki a hug, which in a single act gave me hope once more. I took a critical look at the basic two-bedroom apartment in the Konohagakure neighborhood, looking for any structural flaws or indications of mold, pests, etc. During my look, I bounced little Naruto-kun a little while he chattered happily on my hip. As I inspected the apartment and gazed out the main window at the magnificent view of the Hokage Tower and monument, I asked the realtor who was courteously waiting by the door, "How much does it cost?" I was careful to speak in a neutral tone. "2 million, said the realtor courteously. The 5-month-old infant in my arms was staring out the window when I turned to face him. I asked him gently, "What do you think, Naruto-kun? Do you like it?" He reached for my hair and looked up at me, grinning ramblingly. He loved to play with it. I smiled and said, "I'll take it," to the realtor. "I'll bring the check in tomorrow." The realtor grinned and said, "I'll make sure to have the keys made up and ready for you," hardly even looking at the infant Naruto in my arms. "Thank you for your purchase." I said goodbye to the realtor after a few more words and started walking toward the Uchiha district. 5 months had passed since the Kyuubi attack, and the deaths of Minato-sama and Kushina-san had completely upended my world. Little Naruto-kun saved me from my gloom. To the amusement of said person, I said in Hokage-sama's office that day that I would raise Naruto-kun no matter what, even threatening to resign as a shinobi if Sandaime-sama didn't permit it. He told me that was his goal when he took me to see Naruto-kun because he believed I was the only person who could keep him safe and ensure his normal development. Jiraiya-sama said that the flush on my face apparently extended down my neck. I regretfully couldn't take him with me immediately because, despite my renewed resolve, I wasn't psychologically prepared to start caring for Naruto-kun. I was getting better after spending a few months with Fuyuko-san and seeing baby Naruto-kun a lot. I had been searching for a suitable place to raise Naruto-kun in Konoha proper since I was officially granted custody of him last week. Fugaku-sama had offered me a place in the Uchiha district, of course, but I had made the decision to get a place of my own in Konoha. Since the night of the Kyuubi, the Uchiha clan had seen a significant shift in sentiment. In addition to the fact that Uchiha had rushed to defend their village, one or more council members had leaked information that Sakari Ni-san had put himself at risk of permanent blindness by recklessly trying to postpone the Kyuubi. Fortunately, he had some remaining vision when he woke up, though he had to use his Sharingan to see clearly. I hugged him tightly when I saw him again, then slapped him across the head and yelled at him for his stupid attempt to teleport the Kami-damned Kyuubi. He was somewhat taken aback when Fugaku-sama told him that he had been transferred to the Konoha military police as a commander and firmly instructed him to never use his Mangekyo Sharingan again unless it was an emergency. However, that paled in comparison to the surprise of the sheer number of his fangirls that appeared out of thin air. Fortunately, they heeded my caution about people who became overly aggressive in their pursuit. After all, I wasn't going to let a possible source for blackmail vanish on me. "We're back!" I exclaimed as I entered the house. The journey home took longer than usual. Naruto-kun wasn't strong enough for me to carry him yet, so I had to walk instead of travel shinobi style, and of course, Naruto-kun, being the cute little sunshine he was, caught the attention of several grandmothers everywhere. As she cheerfully welcomed us, my mother asked, "How did it go?" I had been a little nervous about my mother and Naruto-kun's first meeting, but as he was known to do, he had my mother completely enamored with him. And I'm grateful for that because my mother showed me everything I needed to know about taking care of a baby, and there was a lot of it. I smiled and said, "We found our home," letting my mother remove the small Naruto-kun from my grasp before removing my sandals. "I'll be bringing the check in tomorrow when I go pick up the keys." As she continued to play with Naruto-kun, my mother gave me a rather dejected look. "Are you sure that I can't convince you to stay home, or take Fugaku-sama up on his offer on a house in the district?" she asked me with confidence. I said, Maybe in a few years, grinning a little. I honestly have been thinking about getting my own place for a while now inside of Konoha proper, plus, because of his condition, Sandaime Sama doesn't want to seem like he's favoring one clan over the other, and the best way for that to happen is for me to leave the Uchiha district, at least for a while. As the three of us entered the actual house, my mother inhaled quietly but nodded her approval. She only paused to place Naruto-kun in a playpen that was secured with Uzumaki seals to keep the child from escaping. It seems that either Kushina-san was adamant about finding me a partner with whom I could eventually have children, or she truly wanted my assistance with Naruto-kun, which was probably not the case. I'm still not sure which is more terrifying to consider. My brother looked up from a little paperwork and said, "Hey, a squirt," using his Sharingan, which he needed more often than not these days as he got used to his new role. "So you got a place, need help moving in?" "Well, Genma-senpai and Rado-senpai will be helping me out, but an extra hand would always be appreciated. Would it be alright though, you missing work?" He replied, I got quite a bit of personal freedom, as I took a seat beside him. It turns out that deciding who patrols where and handling paperwork are the main responsibilities of an internal patrol's commander. His frustrated expression made me laugh a little. Poor Oni-san, relegated to the desk because he decided to play hero, I teased, and he rolled his eyes in response. "I work hard to take care of my hair, so thank you very much. Are you ready to do some more Susanoo training tonight?" "Whatever you say, squirt," he replied, teasing my hair to irritate me, which it did. I had been busy making sure my head was straight enough to raise Naruto-kun, but I had been doing more than that. Sakari Ni-san was prepared to tear out his eyes and implant them into mine as soon as he heard that I had woken my Mangekyo on the night of the Kyuubi. After an hour of arguing with our mother and me, he finally agreed to wait a little while before doing so, but at least he had finished teaching me some of the more esoteric Mangekyo skills. It didn't take me long to gain the assistance of my Ama no Yukihashi and Kamiyo-naneo, whose skills were relatively easy to work with and combine. Susanoo, on the other hand, took me 4 months to manifest in its cloaked form. I was a little taken aback when my own assumed a somewhat feminine form, but then again, every other Susanoo user on the show had been male, so it should come as no surprise that my light blue chakra construct had a single kodachi. "Sure," I said with ease as I ran my fingers through my hair to repair the damage Sakari Ni had caused, enjoying the moment when Naruto-kun started piling blocks on top of each other and knocking them over. "I think I got the hang of it, but some practice never hurts," I said. Sakari Ni-san laughed and confirmed that it doesn't, returning to his paperwork while his mother smiled subtly. "I apologize, but what were you trying to tell the public?" "Telling them that Naruto-kun is a Jinchuriki is a foolish move, Hokage-sama," I asked my commanding officer in his office, with a 1-year-old Naruto-kun playing with some paper and crayons at my feet. I scowled as I crossed my arms over my modestly growing bust and my crimson jacket, which now had my personal symbol of a 5-petaled flower on the back. "Hokage-sama, they won't see him as a hero, they'll see him as the Kyuubi itself, not to mention that his anonymity is his best defense against any of the other countries wanting to acquire a new Jinchuriki for themselves." Sandaime Sama retorted, but Minato wanted the villagers to see him as a hero, which made me sigh. "And we both know that Minato-sama is more than a bit naive about the people being accepting of things," I said, causing him to wince a little. "Remember when he wanted to introduce the tax reform all at once instead of a bit at a time? Even though I would freely admit to being in love with the man until the day I die, he occasionally lacked common sense when it came to people. He was excellent with people, but he struggled to read more than a quadrupedic who was blind, deaf, and dumb." "Look, give people a few years to grieve the lost and heal," I replied, attempting to negotiate with him. "Maybe it can be revealed when he becomes a Chunin. By then he would have been able to prove his loyalty to Konoha to everyone, and he should be strong enough to fend off any potential kidnappers. Plus it will give him time to train with his powers as a Jinchuriki to show that he is in control of the Kyuubi's chakra," I added, holding up a hand to prevent his reaction. "I'm not saying we should tell him as soon as he can understand, but he should know before he makes genin and starts going out on missions that could cause him to draw on the Kyuubi's chakra." Fortunately, Sarutobi-sama, who had started to insist that I address him by his name rather than his title, seemed to consider this suggestion. "I shall take your words under advisement as Naruto-kun's guardian," he told me, rubbing his eyes wearily, sighing as he sagged in his chair, looking far too old. "There is something else I wished to speak with you about," he added after a few more moments. "The daimyo has requested you by name for a mission." Startled, I blinked. "The daimyo, sir? What is the mission exactly?" I asked. "He wants you to retrieve a stolen item from a group of bandits that attacked one of his convoys," Sarutobi-sama said. He wants you specifically to deal with them, retrieve the item, and present an example on why not to steal from the daimyo. Yes, that would explain why I was picked at the time. I fought in a rather bloody 90% of the time. Important quest warning. Goal: take the daimyo's item and destroy the Bloodhand Bandit tribe. Reward: 25,000 experience points and plus 7,500 fire daimyo reputation. Bonus goal. Reward: Sarutobi-sama handed me the mission scroll and I said, "Understood, I'll leave as soon as I'm ready," before picking up Naruto-kun and saying, "I'll return as soon as I am finished." With a nod, Sarutobi-sama dismissed me, letting me go and head home to prepare for my mission. After putting Naruto-kun in his playpen, I went into my room, took off the basic shirt and pants I was wearing when I wasn't on duty, and started putting on my uniform, which had changed slightly as I got older. The black t-shirt I had been wearing underneath had been swapped out for an armored mesh shirt with a bandage placed around my modest chest. The skirt was now a little shorter, and the spandex shorts underneath had been cut significantly shorter. As I grew more accustomed to being a girl, I felt more at ease exposing my body. With a sigh, I took my red jacket and put it on before removing my kodachi from its place where it had been locked out of Naruto-kun's grasp and placing it in its holster. "All right, Naruto-kun, how about we go see Auntie?" As I picked him up, I asked him. "Oie." Naruto-kun let me pick him up and squealed with joy. "You're correct." I gave him a big smile and encouraged him as I made my way to the door, snatching his overnight bag as I went by it. As one of the few truly combat-capable medics, I was in high demand. Saya Taicho, who had been promoted to the head of the hospital, was frequently too busy, and Tsunade-sama had left after the Second Shinobi War, so I think I would never be grateful enough for my mother taking care of Naruto-kun whenever a mission required me to be assigned to them. Since obtaining custody of Naruto-kun, I have been on 3 of them so far, and to be honest, the only thing that has kept me sane after them has been returning home to him. There is nothing like a massacre to drive you insane, so it makes sense that Itachi ended up so damaged if this was the caliber of missions he undertook. However, Naruto-kun was now painfully pulling at my hair, and I had a job to do. I gently reprimanded him, "Naruto-kun, that hurts," as I untangled my long hair from his plump fingers. "Eddie." He let me loose the hair that seemed to fascinate him, and he giggled joyfully. He let out a happy squeal when I gave him a smile and a forehead kiss. "Oie." As I walked into my childhood home, Naruto-kun joyfully cried out. "Naruto-kun," my mother excitedly greeted him, removing him from my arms to embrace and swoon over him. "This is a surprise, I wasn't expecting you today," she said to me after welcoming the happy, blonde child. "Were you assigned a mission?" I nodded in agreement and sighed. "Yeah, Daimyo requested me so I can't exactly beg off it," I said, setting Naruto-kun's go bag aside. "I'll be gone for a week or 2, and it's near the Taki no Kuni border, so at least I won't have to dodge enemy patrols." "Naruto-kun will be fine with me and your brother," Mother said with a sigh of relief. "Thank you," I said appreciatively, giving my mother a firm embrace before giving Naruto-kun another forehead kiss. "Please behave for Auntie. Before you know it, I'll return." When I gave him some attention, Naruto-kun appeared to realize that I was leaving and became a little upset, but eventually calmed down. I said my goodbyes, went out the door, and started running in the direction of my mission. Given how many of his samurai he assigned to them, I couldn't understand how these fools were able to raid one of the daimyo's caravans. Perhaps he will eventually start employing ninja to escort them as well. Although there was only one entrance into the cave that I followed them to, Taki no Kuni, I was still somewhat surprised to discover that the bandit tribe itself was full of idiots after I had silenced one of their sentries. Fortunately, I was able to prove that I was pursuing a group of shinobi by presenting my mission scroll to a Takigakure team of shinobi on border patrol. It turns out that the Tsuchikage had raised my rating to a rank after joining Minato-sama's Hokage Guard platoon. I really need to keep a closer eye on the bingo book. 2 of the 4-man team seemed shocked that a kid would be on such a high-profile mission, but the other 2 recognized me from my bingo book entry. I let out a little sigh, braced myself, and stepped forward, not bothering to cover my footsteps, as I shook my head to rid my mind of the distracting thoughts and concentrated on the bandits partying deeper into the cave, seemingly celebrating their attack on the daimyo's convoy. "Did you really think that Konohagakure would allow such an attack to go unpunished?" I yelled, my voice resonating throughout the room where the bandits had taken up residence. "Who the fuck?" the apparent leader shouted out angrily, a slashed Kirigakure hite on his head. So that's probably how they got through the samurai. Kill the bitch, she's just a child." When they saw me, The bandits all roared with laughter. Granted, I had finally stepped outside the 4-foot range, but at 5 feet even, I was by no means a formidable presence. I therefore chose to instill fear in them. High-pressure bullet. Water release, I called out after forming the seals of my jutsu. 3 bullets of water rippling from the moisture-rich cave walls and caved in the skulls of 3 of the bandits. Forming a new set of seals, I braced myself for the retaliation. Water release. Mantle of the Blue Dragon. The first bandit arrived soon after the cape formed on my body, slashed a sword at my head, which I simply tipped out of the way of, and slashed my kodachi across his neck, leaving him to bleed out behind me as I stepped forward, ignoring the blood on my face. One of my favorite defensive techniques, reducing damage from fire chakra by half while also reducing the enemy's chance for a critical hit. The ones who were pursuing their fellow paused when I smiled cheerfully at them, so I must have upset them. Please, can we continue this massacre in an orderly manner? I asked politely. After all, it didn't cost anything to be courteous, because I have a little brother waiting for me to come home after all. I then created a set of seals with my left hand and activated Chakra Flow. Chakra Scalpel. At last. Fire Release. Crimson Flames. I declared as I exhaled a long stream of fire onto the ranks of the bandits, causing the unwashed men to panic as the fierce flames swept over them. Rising Water Slicer. Water Release. The ground shattered and cracked as the bandit boss yelled at me from where he had just completed creating a set of seals, sending a stream of water hurtling through it in my direction. I threw one of the bandits into the path of the jutsu by leaping back and grabbing him. The high-pressure water sliced him in half before the liquid spread, and I turned to face the bandit who had apparently found the courage to thrust a spear at me. I flung the edge of my water cloak, keeping my own body mostly dry beneath it, and cracked the end against his wrist to deflect him before slackly slicing him with my empowered kodachi, causing the man to choke as he fell over and clutched at his chest in agony. Fire Release. Crimson Orb. I declared, spitting out a medium-sized ball of fire that exploded on contact with a now screaming bandit. I didn't even pay attention to him as I started running towards the Kiri missing nin. My left hand started to form more seals as my detached gaze swept over the crowd. As I made my way to the Kirigakure ninja, I danced through the ranks of the enemies, causing irreversible harm to their internal organs with my kodachi. Is this really all you can do? Send your little minions at me? At least the ones I killed during the war put up a somewhat decent fight, I asked him mockingly. Bloody scalpel, he said, gaping as he started to back away. The criminal scowled, his eyebrows knitting together in bewilderment, before his eyes widened, recognition clicking into place as he placed my face. The one and only, I declared, finally activating my Sharingan, but I didn't stop there as it blossomed into its 5-petaled form. Sorry, but you boys won't be leaving here alive, I said, as light blue wisps of chakra began to surround me, the mantle of the water dragon, splashing around me as I released the technique. It was useless now that my Susanoo was formed, its cloaked feminine form glaring down at the now completely terrified shitless bandits as it drew its kodachi. But thank you, for giving me the opportunity to practice my abilities where no one will see them, and goodbye. From then on, it wasn't even close to a battle, it was a complete slaughter as I tore through them with Susanoo, my first actual use of it in combat. I felt the powerful rush of power that I had worked so hard to suppress as I fought. The Mangekyo Sharingan could manipulate your mind, making you feel like you had far more power than you actually did. It was for this reason that I used it at this time. While it was easy to justify its use in training, it was not this time. They were unable to harm me while it was in effect, and they fell in droves as they attempted to flee. Despite everything, I had to remind myself of my humanity, with the image of little Naruto-kun's smile burning in my mind as I complied with the daimyo's request and set an example for the group. Breathing heavily, I released my Susanoo, blood streaming from my eyes as it subsided, the burning sensation from activating nearly incapacitating if I hadn't become accustomed to it by now. The biggest surprise I discovered, though, was the trick door at the back of the cave, which I only noticed when my Mangekyo mysteriously activated without my activating it. It took me some time to recover enough breath to start walking again, but once I was properly mobile, I started exploring the cave, looking in all the crevices, finding the box containing the daimyo's seal, and putting it in a storage scroll for transportation. A simple shrine with a naginata at rest was in the center of another open cave that I entered by following the path behind the trick door. The cave was illuminated by a greenish glow from some sort of stones. The first thing I noticed was that it was old. The shrine's wood had started to decay, but the naginata itself was untouched. The incredibly dense chakra that the weapon was emitting when I activated my Sharingan nearly blinded me. I looked around for the person who said, descendant, and my eyes widened as a strong voice boomed through the room. If you wish to wield the power of this sacred treasure, you must prove yourself worthy of such power. Essential side quest goal: overcome the 6 Paths Spectre. Reward: hold on. Spectre of what? A man with grayish skin and a monastic-style robe appeared as soon as the quest alert vanished from my view. He had a staff in his hand that was so black that it appeared to drink in the surrounding darkness, and a third eye on his forehead that resembled a Sharingan with several rings around the iris contrasted with a pair of pupilless lavender eyes. The 6 Paths Spectre, level 60, 10,000 hydrogen phosphide CP, 10,000. Oh. Exhaling, I prepared myself and used my Mangekyo Sharingan, thinking, fuck, I'm going to not do my best to survive this. I quickly formed a string of seals in response, as if that was all the Spectre needed to charge me. Fire release. Great flame annihilation. I said this before unleashing a powerful stream of fire at the rushing ghost, which smashed into the fire and swept its staff to put out the flames and keep him safe. With Chakra Flow, Chakra Scalpel, active and Tasuki no Usagi in my hand, I activated the Inaba Rabbit jutsu and blurred forward, acting as though I was going to attack. The Spectre brought his staff around to counter me, but I passed overhead with both of my eyes bleeding. Great Flame Annihilation. Fire Release. My voice sounded like it was staked upon itself multiple times as an echo yelled. After activating my Kamiyonanayo, I twisted time and space to unleash the jutsu I had just used, initially following the same path it had taken when it was first released. Ama no Yukihashi's activation changed that, rerouting the paths of 6, Great Flame Annihilation, to encircle him entirely and unleash the flames on the Spectre from every side. If 7 high B-ranked fire ninjutsus were released simultaneously from all directions, I would consider this to be overkill even against Cage. The burning of all the oxygen alone would be sufficient to kill a man. But I needed more for what I'm dealing with. As the fire made contact with the ghost that was annihilating one of the fire streams, I soared through the hand seals. Wind Release. Great Breakthrough. As I launched the C-ranked Wind Nature Jutsu straight into 6 B-ranked fire jutsus that were in use, I yelled. My inner pyromancer would have been thrilled to see the resulting explosion of white-hot flames if I had been far enough away, but since I was directly above it when I let them out, I'm counting this as one of my worst life decisions. The light blue chakra of my Susanoo surrounded and protected me as I flew through the air, gritting my teeth as my eyes burned. I landed on top of one of the outcropping glowing rocks with a nervous expression on my face after flipping a few times. As I let my Susanoo ribcage fade, I thought, okay, don't think that was supposed to happen. My gaze shifted to the center of the fire I had started and I saw the Spectre standing there, its robe missing a sleeve and showing some burns on the arm, but otherwise appearing to be undamaged. Now that is 7 levels of bullshit, I thought. The 6 Paths Spectre, level 68,657 hydrogen phosphide CP, 8,965. However, I did cause some harm, don't you think? The Spectre said, Bansho Tenin, and extended its hand to me. Oh, I see. Fuck, Rinnegan. I channeled my chakra into the rock in an attempt to thwart the attraction technique, but it simply slid off of it. Oh, shit, I yelled as I bounded in the direction of the ghost. My eyes started burning once more. Susanoo, as he swung his staff at me, the chakra construct quickly formed around me into its fully cloaked form as I yelled in desperation. In retaliation, I swung the Susanoo Kodachi, meeting the black staff with a resounding that I couldn't even begin to describe. My eyes widened when the Spectre reached out to touch the construct. The Preta path allowed the user to absorb all types of chakra, so I cut the technique off and charged forward, using my Kodachi to slash at him. 8-stroke beheading. I struck out 8 times in quick succession, each one aimed at the Spectre's head, using the technique I had learned from Orochimaru all those years ago. Since it was a Spectre, my tried and true method of bleeding it to death wouldn't work as well on it. Only 2 of the strikes struck, scoring blows across both sides of the neck, but they didn't do enough damage for my tastes. I let my momentum carry me as my swing pushed my arm to the side. I raised my leg to try to hit his chin, but he swept his staff around and pulled my other leg out from under me. Shinra Tensai. The Spectre declared, slamming me with the repulsion technique. I put a hand on the ground and channeled chakra to my palm in a variation of the wall walking chakra control exercise to root me in place. I pulled myself back, pulling my legs just out of reach of his empty palm before he could absorb my chakra from me directly. The clinical part of my mind said, he must have used that when I launched my wind ninjutsu to negate most of the damage. As I bounced along the ground, then got my feet under me and slid to a stop just in time to see him charging at me once more. Great fireball. Fire release, I declared, letting go of the jutsu, that I could stop using seals before my right eye started to bleed once more. Great fireball. Fire release. 7 Mez yelled as they all let go simultaneously, piling on top of each other to form a gigantic fireball directly behind my first one. I continued to form seals after that. Earth release. Rock gun, I declared, took a breath, and started spitting out small pebbles that quickly grew into fist-sized rocks. My goal was accomplished because the dozen or so rocks I spat out were now on fire as they hurtled at the specter who had been getting ready to absorb the chakra flames. The rocks, moving faster than my fireballs, passed through the largest one, regrettably dispersing my flames. Even though he managed to avoid most of them, 4 of them crashed into him. 2 on his shoulders, 1 on his chest, and the final one on his upper right thigh. I slashed my kodachi at him, barely 10 feet away, and as he recovered, the water on the blade leapt out like a whip to slash at him, but he blocked the whip with his staff. Water release. Chakra flow, I declared, ignoring the pain in my eyes and charging forward as moisture from the surrounding area started to circle around my kodachi before flowing onto it. I kept slashing at him with the water whip on my blade, not giving him any time to recover, and as my blows were deflected, I left long furrows in the ground. As I divided my attention, my brow perspired in concentration as my free hand started creating more seals. Water release. High-pressure bullets, I yelled, creating 3 water bullets that were aimed at the ghost. As he was about to deflect them with his staff, my left eye throbbed, but they disappeared and then reappeared at his back at the same speed as before, slamming into his back and propelling him forward. It was sufficient for me to obtain the lengthy string of seals needed for my next technique, even though it didn't do much damage. Water release. Water dragon bullet, I yelled as the water from my previous water techniques and the moisture that had accumulated on the walls formed a huge water dragon that hurled itself at the ghost. He extended his hand, and the moment the water touched it, the dragon fell to the ground, causing mud pools to form all around it as the Preta path drained the construct of all its water. Kami damn it, I moaned, gasping for air as my eyes darted to my home display. CP. 2587. My chakra was severely depleted, damn it. The 6 Paths Spectre, level 67,136 hydrogen phosphide CP, 8085. Oh no, I have to figure out how to get rid of this guy before my chakra runs out. As he looked at me indifferently, I swallowed and pulled myself to my feet. I was the first to move, using my Inaba Rabbit technique to launch myself at him at full speed, closing the distance in a split second. All he needed to hit the ground with his staff. The specter followed my movement with all 3 of his eyes before jerking his staff above him to strike me while I was in the air. I slammed my foot into the ground and flipped, heels over my head. The tip of my kodachi and the tip of his staff met as I thrust my blade, and I surprised both of us by balancing there. We stared at each other in wide-eyed shock for only a few heartbeats, but that was more than enough time for me to open my eyes once more. Rock gun. Earth release. As dozens of fist-sized rocks rushed at him from all sides, 7 Mez yelled. Tensai Shinra. As my left eye began to bleed alongside my right, I managed to keep him in sight despite the specter's loud announcement and the repulsive force that blew me to the ceiling. I gritted my teeth and said, Ama no Yukihashi, as my eyes burned and all the rocks he had just deflected reappeared next to him, arranged so that he had no escape route as the rocks started to rain down on him. My right arm and my kodachi were surrounded by a light blue chakra. Susanoo. Chakra flow scalpel. I screamed as the ribcage of my Susanoo surrounded me. A singular arm formed alongside of the arm I was gripping a kodachi with. The phantasmal weapon the Susanoo was wielding was a light with more chakra than normal. Straight slash. The enormous chakra blade crashed down on the unsteady specter, who was able to reach his arm up to absorb the technique, and I swung my arm down as quickly as I could, with the partial Susanoo following every move. Kamiyonaneo had a longer cooldown period than Ama no Yukihashi, but Kamiyonaneo was one of the many things Ama no Yukihashi could replicate. I gritted my teeth and endured the pain as I replicated Susanoo. Chakra flow scalpel. Straight slash. 7 times in unison with Kamiyonaneo. It hurt a lot to replicate 2 jutsus at once. The outcome, you ask? The occupied specter's eyes widened at the sight, and shortly before he disappeared under the slamming of blades upon him, it caused several phantasmal, Susanoo, arms to slash down on him, in addition to completely draining my tank. As I hit the ground, I coughed and grunted in agony as I struggled to stay conscious and try to get myself up. As the dust settled and the specter was visible standing there with severe injuries and cuts all over its body, the strong voice roared, "Descendant, you have proven yourself worthy, the sacred treasure is yours." The ghost moved closer, and I finally saw the naginata in his hands. The voice said, "Wield its power with honor, and never falter from your path," as the naginata was shown to me. The naginata lit up with the same light blue chakra as my Susanoo, and I gritted my teeth as I reached out with a shaky hand and clasped the weapon. As its name filled my mind, the weapon became blurry. Amananahoko. Then everything darkened. The statement, "With creation comes destruction, and with destruction comes creation," was indescribable. It sounded like 1,000 distinct voices speaking simultaneously, yet it was all one voice. With this treasure, the earth was risen and given form, and with this treasure, all can be returned to dust. What the fuck is this shit, really? I had no idea where I was, and it felt like I had died, oh God, when I was first reincarnated. The voice went on, oblivious to my mental collapse. One must understand how to destroy in order to understand how to create. You humans are the closest species to understand this truth in quite a while. I wonder, will you be able to truly master the Amananahoko, or will you be like so many other mortals and crumble under the weight of its power? He has marked you, but he is always fickle with his gifts. Should you succeed in mastering the Amananahoko, I would be interested in acquiring you myself. Keep a strong will, mortal, for what you wield is a sacred treasure, and it is just as likely to master you as you mastering it. Well, that wasn't at all threatening. The voice gave a funny little laugh and then seemed to ignore me. I sat bolt upright from my, whatever it was, and let out a ragged gasp. You've been sleeping on the chilly, hard ground for 5 hours. 10% HP and CP restored. Well, I suppose that's better than nothing. I tried to focus on the world outside the box by blinking multiple times, but all I saw was a blur. Yes, it seems like I overused my Mangekyo Sharingan in that final stunt. It sounds cool to combine 3 abilities, both in theory and in practice. The consequences? Not so much. Now, let's see what happened to the quest alert. Quest completed on the side. Demonstrate yourself to the 6 Paths Spectre. Reward: when Susanoo is active, they can use the sacred treasure Amananahoko. Oh, so I got a special weapon like Itachi did with Yada no Kagami and Totsuka no Tsurugi. Well, that's not something to be upset about. I yelled, "Skills," in the hopes that the weapon would show up. The ability to freely control and shape the earth to one's will, even altering its elemental composition, is provided by Amananahoko, Heavenly Jeweled Spear. Active, level N, A, steep cost of the chakra. On paper, it seemed straightforward and earth-shifting, but it was there, Mother of God. The ability to alter the very elemental composition, however, was something else entirely in practice. Just touching the ground would produce enormous blocks of steel, whether weapons grade or not, making me an amazing asset for production alone. Hell, by creating enormous amounts of gold and other rare metals, I could destroy the entire goddamn economy. I would be a nightmare in battle, and the ground we were standing on would either turn into a huge spiked pit or just open up into a black void that would then close, enclosing them. This was not going to help me suppress the god complex that my Mangekyo was trying to instill in me, mother of all the kamis. I shook my head, shut the box, and stood up, surveying the cave. The ground was in ruins, some rocks were still burning, and when used properly, my dear Kami's Mangekyo Sharingan was devastating. Well, this place got really screwed up. I didn't want to take longer than necessary, though, because I had a mission to finish. Fortunately, I had recovered and had my clothes fixed from the specter's damage by the time I arrived in Hai no Kuni's capital, making me presentable to the fire daimyo. The daimyo said, "Thank you for retrieving this box," as I knelt down in front of him after giving the box to one of his guards. "I trust the example has been made?" "Of course, Daimyo-sama," I said, maintaining a neutral tone. "Their bodies shall send the message to any who would think of attacking you on what will happen." The man waved his fan in acceptance and hummed. He remarked, "So young, yet so skilled," with approval. "Would you be interested in joining my ninja guardians?" "I'm flattered, Daimyo-sama, but I have responsibilities back home that require my near constant attention at this time," I politely replied. "I thank you for the offer all the same." As one of the guards approached with a scroll and letter, he said, Very well, you may leave. Please pass my message on to Hiruzen for me, will you?" I affirmed, "Of course, Daimyo-sama," and got to my feet, bowing at the waist before taking the goods. "By your leave, I shall return to Konoha now, Daimyo-sama." He dismissed me with a wave of his fan, letting me walk away from him. I let out a deep sigh and relaxed after waiting until I had left the palace and reacquired my visible weapons. I muttered to myself, stupid stuffy nobles, and started to move through the capital, eager to get home. Regretfully, unless there was an emergency, it was against the law to ninja run through the capital. In order to get some souvenirs for my mother and little Naruto-kun on the way out, I hoofed it until I was outside the city limits. However, there were still some good merchant stands along the way, and I almost broke the arm of a pickpocket who clearly didn't notice the Konohagakure Hite 8 on my forehead. Eventually, I left the city, which allowed me to accelerate and shorten the 5-day walk to a 5-hour journey. Being a ninja was amazing at times. I was still yawning, though, as I went through the gates of Konoha, checked my identity with the Chunin on duty, and then headed to the Hokage's tower to report in. I suppressed my yawn and rubbed my bleary eyes while I waited for Sarutobi-sama to arrive, signaling to one of the Anbu guards that I had a message from the daimyo. As he entered and accepted the scroll and message I was carrying for the daimyo, he undoubtedly concealed his fatigue better than I did. As I concealed a yawn behind my hand, he raised an eyebrow and asked, "How did the mission go?" "Simple enough, went there, met some bandits, might have gotten a little carried away practicing my Susanoo on them," I shrugged. I wasn't saying that I didn't trust Sarutobi-sama with my new abilities, but I was fairly certain that Danzo had a way to obtain information in this room, and I didn't want to give the Warhawk any kind of hint about my new weapon. Not unless I was using it to push an earth spike up his crippled ass. He said, "I see," following a pause. "Very well then, please do be more careful in the future. Can't have Naruto-kun's guardian going blind, now can we?" "Of course not, Sarutobi-sama," I said, giving him a weary grin. "If you don't mind, I would love go and get some sleep." He laughed and waved me away. "Go ahead, Yuriko-chan," he said. "Welcome home." Essential quest finished. Goal: take the daimyo's item and destroy the Bloodhand bandit tribe. Reward: 25,000 experience points and plus 7,500 fire daimyo reputation. Bonus goal: set a complete example for the tribe's leader. Discovered the complete shrine to the Sage of Six Paths. Reward: plus 1 million Ryo entry to the search for Amananahoko, the sacred treasure. You've advanced one level. Before I closed the completion box and headed to my mother's house, I hardly even blinked at it. I decided to spend the night at my mother's house since Naruto-kun was most likely asleep by this point and I was too exhausted to try to wake him up in the middle of the night. I went in, greeted my mother and brother, and gave them a very shortened version of the mission. Found some bandits, killed some bandits. Then, I went to bed and crashed into it head first, stopping only to set my kodachi on top of my old dresser after taking it off my leg. You've been in bed for 9 hours, HP and CP completely recovered. The telltale squealing sound of Naruto-kun's giggling told me he was in the kitchen, so I got out of bed, stretched, and let out a jaw-cracking yawn before leaving my room. "Naruto-kun," I exclaimed as I walked into the kitchen and saw my brother playing with some blocks with the child in his playpen. Naruto-kun joyfully exclaimed, "Mama," as he extended his hand for me to grab him. I blinked and hesitated for a moment before picking him up. My brother gave me a suspicious look and then shrugged. "What, you were pretty much," he said in response to my silent argument, and Naruto-kun gave me the best 1-year-old hug possible. I rolled my eyes at him and then embraced my mom. She asked me, "How was the mission?" as I walked around making myself a cup of coffee while holding Naruto-kun in one arm. "Tiring," I came to say. "Wasn't hard, they went down easily, just decided to come straight home instead of spending the night at the capital." I grabbed the sugar container and began to pour it into my coffee, but the stream of white grains missed and spilled across the counter. I quickly put the container down and swallowed a curse. My mother's voice made me freeze when she said, "Sweetie, how much did you use your Mangekyo on the mission?" I sighed and sagged slightly, not even realizing that Naruto-kun had gotten my hair into his mouth. He was apparently at the point where everything was edible, and he began chewing on it. I quickly pulled my poor helpless hair away from him and looked at my mom. "Against the bandits? Not much, just doing some testing with Susanoo that needed some live targets," I said, avoiding eye contact. When I was making my check through for any survivors or anything useful, ended up finding some kind of hidden door that somehow triggered my Mangekyo Sharingan. I entered and followed a path that led to a shrine for the Sage of Six Paths. I recounted to the two of them. "Yeah, pretty much." Then my stupid gaming powers kicked in and I had to fight a specter of the Six Paths, which led to me using the full extent of the Mangekyo right from the start. With his Sharingan active, It was quite funny to watch my brother cough on air at that part of the news, his eyes widening even more in shock as he stared at me. He choked out, "A specter of the six paths." My final grin was sheepish. "Yeah, I may have found a Menenuhoko, and can now use it with my Susanoo," I said. Thump Mom fainted on the wooden floor, and I hope she didn't hurt herself. My brother questioned me about the battle with the specter while we waited for our mother, who is Naruto-kun's adopted aunt, to recover from her fainting spell. He almost lost his mind over my decision to duplicate my Susanoo 7 times and change its trajectory 7 times. During his tirade, I actually began to come up with a moniker for it as I was allocating the stat points from my level up last night. I used my final point on my luck and 4 points to raise my STR and VIT to 60. I raised an eyebrow at my brother and returned my focus to his frantic tirades when he half yelled, "Well." When I honestly said, "Well what?" I stopped paying attention when you started ranting. He let out a sound that sounded like a sob and a strangled shout. In a somewhat high-pitched voice, he informed me, "The fact that if you go blind before I transfer my eyes into yours, then that's it, there ain't no going back." I shot him a look that told him he was being foolish. "Sakari Nisan, if I didn't do it, I wouldn't be sitting here for you to rant at," I shot back. How does Susanoo, Kamiyonaneo, all directions straight cut, sound for the name of the technique?" "You want to name it?" He stared at me. "You're planning on using it again, aren't you?" Once more, I rolled my eyes at him. I said to him, "Well, if I have to, I will. After all, I can't not use it if I need to." As I began to feed Naruto-kun, the bottomless pit, Sakari ni moaned and sank into the chair across from me. "Please, just wait until you get my eyes," he practically pleaded with me. I smiled at him and let out a dramatic, "Fine," sigh. I laughed when he said, "That grin does nothing to soothe my fears," in a deadpan manner. I said to the clan leader, "You know, Fugaku-sama, I get they're supposed to be geniuses and all that, but I don't think having me as his sparring partner is exactly fair," and he just laughed. Naruto-kun, who was now 2 years old, was playing with Sasuke-kun nearby, and Shisui and Itachi Uchiha were across from me. He shot back, looking at the two getting ready, Itachi as expressionless as ever and the older Shisui with a slight smile, eager to spar with me. Perhaps, but they could use the experience of fighting more experienced opponents, especially now that they're genin, he said. I rubbed my neck and moaned. I sighed as I turned to face Shinsui and pulled out my Kodachi, spinning it around a couple of times before settling into my stance and using my Sharingan. "Alright then, I guess," I said. "I'll let you make the first move, Shisui-kun." He pulled his tanto out from over his shoulder and faded into obscurity, his face settling into a serene mask. Well, this is the body flicker that he used to establish his reputation. Shisui gaped as his slash went through empty air as I made a vertical jump with the help of Inaba Rabbit, and there was a crack. When he came down, I cut at him, but he vanished. With a chakra-infused hand gripping the ground, I flipped myself up to slam my foot into him as he attempted to slip around me, leaving another afterimage to confuse me. "So quick you leave an afterimage, huh?" I yelled as I leapt to the side, avoiding another blow to my back before slamming my foot into the ground and launching myself at him. Before he could get away again, I finished my flip, grabbed his arm, and pulled him into a headbutt onto the bridge of his nose. I heard my Hite 8 slam into it with a crack. Those things were really helpful for headbutting people. I then kicked him away, leaving one of my marker seals on him without him realizing it. His form blurred as afterimages started to emerge, and he charged forward once more. Ignoring them, I concentrated on Shisui's mark and followed it effortlessly while using my Kodachi to block his tanto. His eyes widened in shock as I didn't appear to be duped by his afterimages. With a smile on my face, I broke the impasse and attacked, quickly slashing at him until he was forced to block them with his tanto and retreat. I put my foot in his stomach as his eyes darted toward my blade, causing him to cough at the unexpected force. I then pushed my right elbow into his chest and thrust my palm straight into his solar plexus. I grabbed him by the shoulder, pulled him off his feet, and threw him into a nearby tree before he had a chance to recover. He recovered himself in midair and landed feet first on the tree, where he remained, watching me suspiciously. I had to give him credit for that. I returned to my preferred stance, happy to let him decide what to do next, without moving to follow him. He advanced once more, but this time he was rushing around me rather than straight at me, leaving behind him a bewildering jumble of black blurs. I thought about my options while mentally monitoring his marker, and then I smiled because, after all, this was the ideal opportunity to try out my own method. I started both the Inaba Rabbit and body flicker jutsu while forming a single-handed tiger seal. Then I disappeared in front of 3 pairs of Sharingan that were fully grown. I didn't leave any afterimages. In contrast to Shisui's undoubtedly brilliant use of the body flicker, I was there for a single second before disappearing and landing right behind my target. My powers gave it the name, Inaba Flicker, after I tried it out to see if they would work well together. I was able to literally disappear from my adversary's line of sight by using an extremely fast movement technique. As I began to release my movement technique, Shisui gasped as my foot struck him, sending him sliding along the ground, stunned by the impact. The technique had a cost, though, and at its current level, the more I used it, the more likely I was to tear my own muscles apart from the speed. I winced as I rubbed my thighs. The down boy moaned in agony and Fugaku-sama asked, "Shisui, can you continue?" He remarked, "I think he's done for now," after a moment. I laughed as I said, "I did spar quite a bit with Minato-sama, even though he is pretty quick. Unfortunately, teleportation trumps high-speed movement." Fugaku snorted and then gave me an approving look. "Teleporting trumps a lot of things," he said. "What was the last move you use?" "I call it the Inaba Flicker." I winked at him. I took the body flicker technique and applied it to my own Inaba Rabbit technique. Before the older one could dismiss him, Itachi worriedly checked on his friend, and Fugaku nodded in understanding. "Ne-chan!" exclaimed little Naruto-kun joyfully, clapping his hands together in celebration of my triumph. "Ne-chan wins." I knelt beside him and Sasuke-kun and laughed. "That's right, I did," I said, grinning broadly. "Now, you ready to meet with Hokage Jisan?" Naruto-kun cried out joyfully, "Gigi," and let me pick him up after I ruffled Sasuke-kun's hair. He was very cute when he pouted after I had done that. I yelled, "Shisui-kun," to the boy who was recuperating. "I would suggest you branch out a bit more. While speed is a powerful thing to catch your enemies off guard, I would suggest you supplement it with some ninjutsu, especially wind if you can manage it." He smiled at me and said, "Right, thanks for the advice, Yuriko-senpai," and I smiled back. What a sweet boy. Oh no, another pointless mission that specifically asked for me, and on Naruto-kun's 4th birthday, too. He was really disappointed when I told him, so I shook my head and kept running through the trees to reach my mission destination. Unfortunately, this was just another mission from the daimyo himself. It now seems like he sends me on missions at least 3 times a year. The last time I went, his 30-year-old son kept staring at my chest. Ugh, what a creeper. Fortunately, this time, I didn't have to report to him in person. Yes, they are a little big for my 14-year-old self, but I'm 14 years old. I was distracted from my thoughts by a sharp whistling as I ducked a kunai that was hurled at my head. I sighed, shook my head, and followed the kunai's trail, coming across a bald, burly man with a slashed Iwagakure Hite 8. I asked in a bored tone, "Wait, let me guess, I killed your brother, sister, mother, father, insert relationship here, now I should prepare to die?" Onoki never actually sent any shinobi at me as he had threatened, but that didn't stop a good number of them from striving for vengeance. Does that sound about right? "Nah, not really, just here for your bounty," answered the ninja bounty hunter, grinning. I stared at him and blinked back. I asked nicely, "You mind tossing me your book? Haven't checked my page in the last few years to be honest," and he laughed before he tossed it to me while patiently waiting for me to open to my page. Bloody Scalpel Yuriko. Bounty S ranking official name. Uchiha Yuriko. 14 years old rank. Jonin elite expertise. Iryojutsu, Kenjutsu. The most popular jutsu is the chakra scalpel technique's unique chakra flow. Warning. This technique is very lethal, even with a graze. 7,500,000 ryo is the bounty that Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Kirigakure must pay. Bonus. An intact corpse with Sharingan still inside will fetch an extra 5 million. Rating. Proceed cautiously. I looked at the page for a long time. I interrupted myself before letting out a, I don't even remember pissing any of them off recently. Right, the 7 swordsman incident, the Mizukage was pretty pissed about that. 4 of the 7 swordsmen of the mist chose to teach me what a real swordsman looked like, but that wasn't my fault. When I left, I was at least considerate enough not to take their swords. When I said that, the bounty hunter laughed. "Pretty much, so, sorry, I actually kinda like how you pissed off the fence sitter at the end of the Third War, not to mention you killed that asshole Shizaki, seriously fuck that guy," he said with a sigh. "But, well, you saw your bounty." No, I quite get it, tempting to turn myself in for that kind of money," I replied with a sigh. "I kinda feel bad about what's going to happen now." He asked in a challenging manner. Oh yeah, and what's that? With the tone of someone who was curious to see what I had planned. Oh man, now I feel worse, this guy just wants to fight the strong guys, he said. I said, sorry, but you'll be helping me test something, as my Mangekyo Sharingan materialized, a Menenuhoko in hand, the light blue chakra of my Susanoo erupting around me as it took shape. But with us so far away from, well, everything, this is just too perfect of a chance to train with my Menenuhoko. The man slammed his fists together and assumed a stance, seemingly unfazed by my Susanoo and sacred treasure. I sighed sorrowfully, thinking that if I had been just 2 years older, I would have felt comfortable sitting down and sharing a drink with him first. As his chakra started to rise, he said, no hard feelings if I kill ya, right? I smiled at him honestly, with a slight hint of bloodlust. Honestly, I said, normally I would say there would be, but with you, I don't think there will be any, as my Susanoo shifted into a certain position. What's your name? He declared, Kon Matsushina, as his chakra, which covered his body like armor, became visible to the naked eye. It's been a pleasure meeting you, Yuriko Uchiha. Yes, professionalism and courtesy are so uncommon these days. I smiled and told him, the pleasure is mine, Kon-san. Professionalism like yours is so hard to find these days. Now, are you ready for us to try and kill each other? He was. I don't think I will ever forget Kon Matsushina. His chakra cloak was unique because it improved not only his defenses but also his speed and offense, making it easy for him to keep up with my Inaba Rabbit technique. To be honest, I might have died if I hadn't had Amananahoko. The Naginata made things extremely easy, as the earth itself rebelled against the bounty hunter, with spikes popping up all around him and metal bars blocking his path. I sincerely hoped we weren't killing each other and that I could persuade him to visit Konoha because the man punched through a goddamn titanium pole. It would have been amazing to witness that strength in action against the Akatsuki. He ultimately lost a battle of attrition, though, with his endurance faltering and his chakra cloak appearing for a brief moment. The man actually gave a rasping laugh as he passed away, and all I had to do was for multiple metal spears to pierce his vital organs. I liked him, so it's a terrible shame. I scowled as I meandered through the streets of Konoha, where Naruto-kun was spending some personal time with Sasuke-kun for a playdate and a sleepover that I had planned with Mikoto-san. That was untrue, though, as a Kumogakure delegation came here tonight in an attempt to kidnap 5-year-old Hinata Hyuga. The attempt was ultimately foiled, but Hisashi Hyuga had to lose his life in order to maintain good relations with Kumogakure. Near the Hyuga compound, my Sharingan eyes caught sight of a swiftly moving figure carrying a big bundle on his back. I was going to let that happen, like fuck. Using the Inaba flicker technique, I pursued the shinobi who was running away, passing him and landing directly in front of him, which caused him to skid to a halt. I asked, and what do you have in that bag that would be making you run from the Hyuga compound? I know that most 15-year-olds aren't particularly scary, but I was going through a growth spurt, sitting at a respectable 5 feet 5 inches, with a toned body and a figure that was flattering if I had any say in it. Not to mention running along the rooftops. You do realize that only makes us more suspicious considering we told you not to do that within these walls. The man snarled a little, and given that I would have been one of the shinobi he would have been briefed about, I'm fairly certain he recognized me. His eyes darted around, searching for a way out. With my kodachi flashing in the moonlight as I drew it and the weapon glowing, I said softly, look, set the kid down, and we can talk this out. If you come in peacefully, I can guarantee that this will have only a minor effect on the treaty, I said. Actually, he was putting Hinata down. What about that? Oh, he's charging now, shinobi death, huh? So be it, I sigh before disappearing from his sight. I then quickly struck his shoulders and hamstrings, using the chakra scalpel to target his hamstrings precisely, crippling him as his muscles failed him. Really, you actually believe that we would just let you do this? A fucking fool. Fucking bitch, Uchiha. The man grunted before I gave him a vicious kick to the head, knocking him out. I turned as a panicked Hyuga Heishi showed up and gestured toward the sack the man was carrying. Without even waiting to inquire, I moved forward and put my glowing hands on his unconscious daughter after the man tore the sack open, searching for any signs of her illness. She will be woozy for a few hours, but don't let her go to sleep for 3 hours until it's totally out of her system, I reassured him gently as I started to rid her of the drug. Thank you, Heishi said gratefully, letting out a sigh of relief. I don't know how to repay you for this. No need for thanks, this village is my home, and the villagers my family. No way I would let someone kidnap a member of my family, I replied, laughing as I gave him a quirked smile. Following my statement, Haishi observed me for a few moments before becoming sidetracked by the sound of little Hinata-chan waking from her sleep. There were times when the suffering, the anxiety, and the labor were all worthwhile. As I watched the father embrace his daughter with relief before grabbing the Kumo Nin and leaving for tea, and I thought, this was one of those moments. I wondered how much this would change things. As we listened to Sarutobi-sama's speech to the academy's new students, I stood behind Naruto-kun, my hands on his shoulders, and he looked up at me with a 6-year-old smile. Fugaku-sama, Makoto-san, and Itachi-kun stood next to Sasuke-kun. Given how much time Naruto-kun had spent in the Uchiha district, whether I was visiting or staying with my family while on a mission, the two quickly became friends, despite the fact that they frequently argued. "I will surpass you as a shinobi, so just wait, Nei-chan," Naruto-kun exclaimed with pride, and I grinned back at him. "I look forward to see that day," I told him honestly, giving him a reassuring shoulder pat as I giggled a little at him, adjusting his nose and making his face contort in a cute way. We turned back to the Hokage as he went on talking. I had a weird feeling as I stood there with Naruto-kun, knowing that he would make a fantastic shinobi, and I tried my hardest to raise him properly for Minato-sama and Kushina-san. Of course, there would be challenges because I was only a teenager raising a child, but we overcame them with strength. My love for my sunshine child has never wavered, and I have never questioned his love for me. He always put his heart on his sleeve and gave me a tight hug after we had calmed down from a fight. Sarutobi-sama said, "And so, I welcome you, future shinobi of Konohagakure," to a courteous cheer that I also joined in. "You've got it all?" I questioned my younger brother. "Yes, I have everything, my books, pencils, lunch, practice shuriken, and kunai." With a toothy smile, he declared. "All right, are you prepared for the first day?" Unable to ignore the nagging sense of anxiety inside of me, I asked him. He rolled his eyes at having to respond to my question for the 5th time that morning, but he said, "Yes, Nei-chan, I'm ready, and if anything happens, I'll be with Sasuke and Hinata-chan." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from talking more. I was able to introduce Naruto-kun to Hinata-chan because, apparently, I had saved her from the Kumo Nin, and as a result, we were free to visit the Hyuga clan whenever we wanted. I sighed and gave him a gentle forehead kiss, causing him to writhe in shame. "Nei-chan," he whimpered as he rubbed his forehead, which made me laugh. His eyes widened in delight as I said, "You had a good day today, we'll go to Ichiraku's for dinner tonight." "Yes." He gave a loud cheer, causing Sasuke-kun to roll his eyes beside us. He sneered, "Calm down, Naruto, it's just ramen," which caused both Naruto and I to glare at him while his family laughed. "Remove that, Teme." As he started to struggle against my hold in an attempt to strangle his friend, Naruto-kun swore. Sasuke grunted, "Make me, Dobi," while the three of us adults rolled our eyes at the well-known scene. It was a good life. My Kodachi flashed as it caught the sunlight, then cleaved through one of the Swamp Falcon's wings off, leaving it to crash into the murky swamp below. A piercing screech filled the air as I flipped over a dog-sized falcon that was attempting to rake me with its claws. "This is going to murder my hair," I moaned, grimacing as I attempted to brush the murky water out of my hair. Sakari Ni-san snorted beside me as he threw a wind-coated kunai at another falcon as we traveled through Training Ground 21, the Wobegon Swamp. I had hoped to arrive here much sooner, but life had a way of getting in the way, especially when you're caring for the extremely active Uzumaki Jinchuriki. Before launching a sealess and wordless fire release, "Great fireball," he laughed and said, "You and your hair. You take more care of that than you do for your Kodachi." I turned my back on him and pulled out another falcon, hiding my blush. "Mom wouldn't let me cut it, and it just grew on me," I said, then moaned when I realized my accidental pun. "So, apparently there's something different with these training grounds after Kyuubi attack," my brother said, laughing as he caught it too. He asked, turning his head away, "Are you observing anything?" I shuddered at the memory. "Not yet anyways, but yesterday I went through the Blackwood Forest and encountered a Kyuubi chakra mutated rabbit," I said, shaking my head negatively. "I just don't want someone coming into one of these and suddenly having 30 different Kyuubi-affected mutations mobbing them," I said, adding that it was not particularly difficult to kill because I was essentially twice as strong as the rabbit in terms of level and stats. "We probably should tell Hokage-sama to section these training grounds off until we can clear them more thoroughly," my brother said, shaking his head before his head snapped up in agreement, his face contorted, "Heads up." His warning spurred me to disappear with the Inaba flicker, just as a colossal falcon soared through the area I had been occupying. Level 45, Kyuubi mutated swamp falcon, I whispered, and there's the other shoe, as I watched the crimson-red falcon flap its wings to get closer to us both. About 15 levels higher than the recommended level. Well, it's fortunate that we arrived here first, isn't it? My brother laughed as he positioned himself next to me, and I smiled back at him, copying him while quickly looking at his statistics. Sakari Uchiha's name level, 70 Express, 1750 35 thousandths. 30 years old male gender title, Kyuubi Repulsor, Konohagakure reputation is said to, exalted, with a 50% bonus to all stats and a 100% bonus to all reputation gains. Data 8900 hydrogen phosphide CP, 27254 STR 100. 175, int. 175, 262. Dex. 140, 245, VIT 88, 132, WIS 155, 232, Luck. 24, 36. Rio. 12,986,631. I smiled more broadly and said, I think we've got this covered between the two of us. The falcon barrel rolled out of the way, straight into me as I appeared next to it, my kodachi glowing with the chakra flow. Chakra scalpel, slashing at its main body. The mutated falcon, unaware of the threat we posed, swept around to attack us, only to be met by a wave of fire as we both unleashed, fire release. Great flame annihilation, at him. Our flames fed off one another to grow more intense. As its own mutated chakra attempted to repel mine, only for mine to succeed, I smiled savagely. Left lung disabled. As I landed on a treetop above the swamp, I called out to my brother. You got it, as Sakari Ni-san completed forming his seals, he shouted back. The fire release, Great Dragonfire, jutsu has been copied by you. Sakari Ni-san's flame, which rose to the heavens and caught the falcon in its maw as it attempted to recover from my collapsing his left lung, definitely lived up to its name. As we looked up, we both started to form seals. Wind release. Vacuum sphere. As the fire ninjutsu was strengthened by the two wind techniques, the two simultaneously yelled and then threw a ball of compressed air into the flaming jutsu, resulting in a tremendous explosion. The Kyuubi mutated swamp falcon is dead. 7,500 Ryo gained, 5,000 Express. I exhaled slightly as we watched the flaming body descend. Well, that was simple, I said. Come on, let's find that boss and finish this up, classes should be finishing soon, he said, jumping forward, and Sakari Ni-san snorted in response, his Sharingan eyes gleaming at me. After all, you have Sasuke-kun and Hinata-chan staying at your place tonight for the kids project. As we kept moving, I rolled my eyes at him and sighed at the reminder. I know, I said, adding, I don't think I'm going to be getting any sleep tonight. I made a half-hearted swipe at my brother, who ducked out of the way and laughed in response to my misery. Watching Naruto-kun work with Sasuke-kun and Hinata-chan on their report on the Third Shinobi War made me smile as I cleared the last of the dinner from the table. It seems that the three of them decided to do a report on the signing of the treaty, which led them to decide on a sleepover. Naturally, they claimed that it was so they could get my first-hand account of it, but I knew they were only waiting to be done before they would ruin the apartment. The Uchiha massacre would start around this time, but the truth was that there was no need for it because the people respected the Uchiha, especially since the night of the Kyuubi. I laughed a little as I looked outside as the moon started to rise up over the monument, a frown briefly fluttering across my face as an uneasy feeling started to fill me. One of my markers started to tremble, indicating that someone was being attacked, and I focused on it, gasping when I saw it was my brother's marker. I rushed for the door, shocking the kids when my kodachi materialized in my hand, and yelled, "Stay inside!" I yelled at them, "Naruto-kun, turn on the seals as soon as I'm gone." "Enne-chan?" Naruto's blue eyes were scared as he stammered in surprise. "Follow my instructions. Do not open the door unless it is Sarutobi-sama or myself, and only after we give you the code word," I yelled as I put on my sandals. After saying my final goodbyes, I ran out of the house and turned on Inaba Flicker to hobble as quickly as I could to the Uchiha district. As I approached my brother's marker, I gasped in shock as I saw the bodies lying in the streets, clearly dead from the amount of blood that was accumulating around them. He was slumped against a wall to one of the bigger houses, and I gasped when I saw him, blood streaming from multiple wounds. "Ni-san!" I screamed out as I landed next to him, my hands alight with healing chakra. "Who?" As the sinking sensation in my stomach intensified, I asked. "Oh Kami," He's lost so much blood. Tachi. My brother coughed weakly. My eyes, take my eyes. No, I shouted, tears welling up in my eyes as I tried to desperately heal him. No, I can prevent this from happening again. I can save you. It's not your fault, my brother said quietly, raising his head just enough to give me a smile. You're stronger than me. Unable to focus on the jutsu, I shook my head as he put a hand over my own while the healing chakra sputtered out. Take them, protect the clan. I bought time for survivors to seal themselves in the safe house, he said, pressing his bloody forehead against mine. His pulse slowed and my eyes widened. Ni-san. As he sagged against me, his heart stopping and all movement coming to a halt, I asked. I couldn't believe that my brother, the man who teleported the kami-damned Kyuubi, had just passed away in my arms. My stomach knotted and my breath froze. I was upset because it began small but soon grew. Gritting my teeth, I placed my brother on his back and placed my hands over his eyes, suppressing a sob as I removed his eyes surgically. Itachi. The name escaped my lips as I cursed, power pulsing through me as I felt a rage I never had felt before as I stood up, my brother's eyes vanishing as I placed them in a seal. I will kill you. There was a loud crack as I launched myself in the direction of the safe house. I could see the Inaba flicker in front of me, so I didn't care if I overcharged it enough to hurt me. Itachi, I roared, the teen turning to see me charging at him with wide Sharingan eyes as he barely managed to move himself out of the way from my scalpel-enhanced fist. You, I growled as I skidded to a stop, glaring at him angrily. My brother, the clan, you fucking. He gave me a suspicious look before his face went still, and I was too furious to speak intelligibly. His voice was toneless as his Sharingan transformed into its Mangekyu form. I wanted to test my power, he replied. I must say, your brother was disappointing. Testing your power, is it? Something inside of me snapped at those words, and light blue chakra swirled violently around me as the spectral skeleton of my Susanoo took form, causing Itachi's eyes to widen in shock. Why don't you try testing me, Kinslayer? I said, my voice trembling with anger as I got to my feet, glaring at Itachi while my own Mangekyu shared bloody tears. Itachi gasped in agony as he narrowly avoided being sliced in two by the Kodachi of the chakra creation before a burst of flames compelled him to use his substitution. His eye bled as black flames attempted to devour my Susanoo, but the ground obstructed his vision as it rose up, sucked the black flames underground, and then settled. Little Itachi, I inhaled as I suddenly materialized beside him, the teenager recoiling as he leapt away from me. Thinks he's so strong because his eyes mutated. I couldn't control the almost hysterical laughter that escaped my lips as I started to approach him, my Susanoo reorganizing around me as I went. I mastered my eyes. Little Itachi, Amananahoko formed in my Susanoo's grasp, Itachi's eyes widening once more in shock upon witnessing the weapon change. I don't really try and use them that often, but there are times when it just feels so right, like right now. Itachi, make me laugh by screaming and pleading for your miserable life because you are going to die. He jumped out of the way as the Susanoo swung its naginata at him as I charged at him, just before spears of earth erupted from the ground to attempt to impale the traitor. I used the skeletal form of my chakra creation to hunt the Uchiha Slayer, yelling his name as I ran after him, without bothering to form the cloaked form of my Susanoo. Why do you run, Itachi? I assumed you wanted to see how strong you were. As I threw away the genjutsu he attempted to apply to me, I yelled at him, genjutsu of that low caliber won't work on me, Kinslayer. You killed your family, you killed my brother, you killed our clan. Itachi grunted as a block of metal slammed into him from behind, sending him tumbling before he was able to make a substitution to keep me from stabbing him with Amananahoko. I ignored the protest my throat was making from the harsh use and yelled at him, I'll test your power. Now, Itachi Uchiha. The real test is in front of you. I was the bodyguard for the Yondaime. Sarutobi-sama hears me out. I'm on the daimyo's shortlist for shinobi employment. Itachi. I am a war veteran. Try your so-called strength on me, then. Please, that's the oldest tactic in the book. I taunted Itachi as the skeletal Susanoo raised its weapon. I guess the only way for you to test your power is against civilians or attacking people from behind, isn't it? Itachi gasped in pain as his attempt to attack me from behind was met with the butt end of Amananahoko, causing me to laugh almost uncontrollably. The world turned red in black as I grinned and said, Little Itachi, I told you already, your genjutsu doesn't work on me, causing the world to crack before breaking and bringing me back to reality in time to see Itachi running away. Itachi grimaced as he leapt back, out of direct range of my weapon, before he met my eyes and triggered his Tsukiyomi. Itachi! I screamed after him as I made to go after him, only for my eyes to pulse in pain as I collapsed to a single knee as several animal-masked Anbu appeared. Don't mind me. Get after him! I shouted at them as I waved in the direction Itachi fled, most of the squad leaping off to pursue him as two remained behind to help to my feet. Not the hospital, I gasped out as my Sharingan faded, everything almost completely blurred out for me. Uchiha Safe House, survivors. Before they helped me move and I was able to activate my Sharingan, I saw one of the blobs in my remaining vision move a little. My vision then returned correctly, allowing me to unlock the safe house's seal. When the door opened, a few people inside yelled a little in terror before letting out a sigh of relief when they saw me with the Anbu by my side. Yuriko-chan. As she rushed up to assist me, my mother exclaimed, "Where is your brother?" I leaned against my mother and cried, I wasn't able to save him, as she put my arms around me. I was too weak, I couldn't save anyone again. I smothered the sob that erupted inside of me, my anger leaving me feeling empty. My mother put a finger to my lips and shushed me gently. You did though, she reassured me, glancing into the safe house where a few genin and chunin were gathered along with dozens of civilians. You saved all of us in here. I peered through the crowd as they started to huddle in my direction, each one silently supporting me while grimly nodding in agreement, while the kids stayed back with unsure expressions. My mother softly whispered in my ear, the Uchiha clan will recover because of you. As Sarutobi-sama entered the safe house accompanied by another pair of Anbu, a new voice said, and it will not do so alone. Konohagakure will do everything in our power to support you all during your time of need. Anbu are already gathering and protecting the bodies of the fallen so that you may cremate them. Everyone's eyes were on me, so I blinked and turned to face my mother, who smiled encouragingly at me and said, as of right now, you are the only one who can take the seat of clan head. You are the strongest one left, dear, she said softly. Very well, I sighed heavily as my mother helped me stand up, and the crowd nodded in agreement as Sarutobi-sama watched, forcing me to bite my cheek. How many of our shinobi survived? One of my clansmen reported, 10 genin, 5 chunin and 3 jonin, including yourself, Yuriko-sama, which made me feel strange because my name has that specific suffix attached to it. Have the chunin join the Anbu in gathering our clansmen and cremate them, I instructed. Then gather the ashes for a proper burial. As they went off to follow their orders, my orders, the 5 chunin saluted in response. Genin, I need you to remain with the civilians, I said, protect them as they gather up their belongings. Our district is currently unfit for human habitation. Is there somewhere we can stay for the time being while we clean up and fix the damage, Sarutobi-sama? He promised, of course, I will have some teams prepare a complex for you right away, and pointed to a silver-haired Anbu that leapt off. We were hurt today, I said, looking around at the assembled group of survivors, taking a deep breath before I spoke. But we still live, Konoha will support us as we get back on our feet. We are not alone in this, our village shares our pain, and should anyone try this again, they will not live to regret it. My clansmen nodded grimly and determinedly, without any shouts of agreement or encouragement. All right, gather your necessities for the time being, I told them, and we'll meet at the clan gates to move to our new home for the time being in an hour. I sagged against my mother as the crowd nodded once more before dispersing, leaving me by myself with Sarutobi-sama, my mother, and one of his guards. Yuriko-chan? My mother asked as she readily carried my weight. I muttered to her, I need you to do something, Mom. My eyes are almost gone, I said, reaching for the seal I had put my brothers in and removing them. I need you to do the surgery and implant Sakari ni Sans into me. After a moment of gasping, my mother scowled, nodded, and turned to face Sarutobi-sama and his guard. Is it possible to close off this area? We can't let anyone see this, she said gravely. Before seals flashed into place around the building, Sarutobi-sama nodded in agreement and motioned to the Anbu, causing the two of them to go outside. All right, I'm going to put you under now. All right, when you wake up, my mother asked, looking down at me gravely, and I nodded in response. She paused, swallowed hard, and then went on, when you wake up, your eyes will be covered for about a week as they settle. I nodded at her and said, do it. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. After giving me a warm smile and kissing my hair, my mother whispered to me, I know, but he knew what he was doing when he told us to get to the safe house, adding, we can grieve later though. I gave a nod of agreement. Let Sarutobi-sama know that I had Naruto-kun seal off the apartment before I left, I advised her. Told him only to open the door to myself or him after giving the code word. My mother gave me a confident nod before putting a glowing hand on my forehead, and as I passed out, everything vanished from me. The world was dark when I woke up, and I could feel bandages covering my eyes and head. I also felt a tiny hand in my own as my sense of touch returned. Naruto-kun? With my throat bone dry, I rasped out in inquiry. "Ne-chan." A familiar voice called out as the hand in my own tightened around me. "You're awake." I knew he was grinning at me even though I couldn't see it, so I curled my lips into a smile. "We're in the hospital?" I asked him. "Yeah, Gigi brought me and Sasuke here. He told us what happened," Naruto-kun said glumly. "Sasuke's been crying since we got here. He's out in the hall right now with Auntie." I understood and nodded. "Naruto-kun, could you get me some water?" I said. "Thank you. Why don't you go and get Sasuke-kun and Auntie? Let them know I'm awake." I heard a little tinkling before a glass was placed to my lips, and I drank the cool liquid. I was sure he was nodding in agreement even though I couldn't see him, but then I heard his shoes hitting the floor, which confirmed it, and he left me alone for a while. I was able to see the box in front of me even though my eyesight was blocked, making it impossible for me to see the surroundings. "You have prevented the Uchiha clan from going extinct by repelling Itachi Uchiha." The title, Equal of the Clan Killer, was obtained. The title of Uchiha Clan Head was obtained. Your brother's Mangekyo Sharingan has been surgically implanted into your own. Acquired was Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Plus 250% dex when active, doubles chakra capacity when acquired, 15 carbon monophosphide. Second, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Active, passive, level 100, max, is the highest level of the Sharingan that can be attained. The EMS enables the user to use their Mangekyo Sharingan abilities without being blinded by eye strain. "Ne-chan." Sasuke-kun called out to me somberly, and I swallowed hard as I was reminded of my brother's passing before being sidetracked by the appearance of 3 pairs of feet. I said, "Hey," opening my arms to let 2 bodies burrow into me. "I'm sorry I wasn't in time to save your parents, Sasuke-kun." I whispered to him as I embraced the 2 bodies closer to me. I could feel Sasuke's silkier hair brushing against my right and Naruto-kun's more familiar soft hair on my left. "Just remember, you're not alone. Ne-chan will always be here." I could feel something moist pressing against me where his face was, and his body trembled against me, alerting me to Sasuke-kun's silent sobs. I smiled and gave him a hug even though I was grieving for myself. I could feel Naruto-kun moving around, most likely to give his friend a hug of his own. "You still have family," I softly whispered to him, reassuring him that he wasn't alone, and we will never leave you alone. As Sasuke-kun started breathing steadily, the shuddering subsided a little. "He's asleep," my mother's gentle voice informed me. "He hasn't slept since he got here the night before last." "I think they'll be fine right here," I said, and my mother laughed softly before kissing my forehead. "I'll take care of the clan until we can take those bandages off," she assured me, and I nodded gently while still holding my 2 younger brothers. "Rest," she reminded me, "we will be here when you wake up." After giving her a nod to indicate that I had heard her, I eased back into the bed and let the warmth of the 2 bodies against me lull me to sleep. I gazed down at the coffins arranged in front of me and the other clan survivors. Each one contained a jar of ash, which stood in for the body. Villagers were gathered all around us, with Sarutobi-sama in front of us. Sasuke-kun was to my left, clutching my hand and only briefly leaving it to use the restroom before rejoining me. The shinobi of the Uchiha clan stood at the forefront, our backs straight and unbent, a sign to those behind us and those who have passed that we will not stop doing our best to protect our home and our loved ones. Naruto-kun, to my right, was just as reluctant to leave my side as his rival was as we listened to Sarutobi-sama give his eulogy for the Uchiha clan members who were killed that night by Itachi. As Sasuke-kun sobbed beside me, I gave him what little consolation I could at the time by gently squeezing his hand. I stepped forward to the front of the crowd before speaking, and when Sarutobi-sama finished, he stepped back and nodded to me. I started to say, but the lump in my throat stopped me, so I had to push back my tears before continuing. "I cannot claim to know every person who died that night. I finally managed to get out, but those that did, I will miss dearly, as I will for those that I didn't. While we lost many of our family today, we do not stand here alone," I said, pausing briefly to collect my thoughts before continuing. I looked around and saw shinobi, civilians, and representatives of the various clans. "And we each feel this loss, but we will not let this loss stop us from protecting our home. Those that remain will continue to stand unbroken, because while we have lost many today, there are those who still live, and a new generation to guide and protect." I met the eyes of several of my clansmen as I spoke, then landed on Sasuke-kun's tearful eyes. And I promise this, and as your 40th clan leader, I swear, I will protect our home, our friends, and our family, so that such a tragedy will never befall us again while I breathe. As the coffins started to descend, I returned to my place after saying my piece and took Naruto-kun's and Sasuke-kun's hands back in mine, squeezing them for my own comfort. I didn't let the sight of the dirt heaped on top of my clansmen break my face once, and when the last of the dirt was thrown and packed down, I turned to my clansmen and nodded at them, letting them scatter and grieve in their own ways before kneeling in front of my boys. Naruto-kun, Sasuke-kun, I need you to go with Auntie for now, I said gently, drawing anxious looks from the two, which I attempted to reassure them with a smile. I have to go to a council meeting with Sarutobi-sama, I clarified, and after that is done, I will be filling out the guardianship papers to have you placed in my care, okay, Sasuke-kun? It will hurt, but the pain will pass, I whispered to Sasuke-kun, who nodded slowly in response before launching himself forward and putting his arms around my neck in a tight hug that I swiftly returned. Remember, your parents wanted you to have a happy life, okay? I'll see you both back at home, I said, grudgingly turning away and jumping off with Sarutobi-sama after feeling him nod against me before finally stepping back and wiping his eyes as best he could with his arms. Heishi nodded at me in acknowledgement as the last few council members filed in, and I took a deep breath as I entered the council room, took my seat, and prepared myself for the upcoming meeting with the Uchiha clan. As he took his seat and faced the heads of the shinobi clans, Sarutobi-sama grimly declared, I will be keeping this short today. Danzo and his former teammates were conspicuously absent, and Sarutobi-sama said, Itachi Uchiha was acting under orders when he attacked the Uchiha clan. We found a missive with my seal of approval detailing the mission assigned. A mission that I never approved, he said, making my stomach knot. Make no mistake, Itachi Uchiha is to be treated as an S-ranked criminal when encountered. Notifications to all bounty stations have been sent out along with the update to the bingo book, Sarutobi-sama told us sharply, meeting our eyes and making me tremble a little. Right now, while we have suspects, we have no proof on who is responsible for this, so I do not want a single word about it escaping this chamber. We all nodded in agreement, and as Sarutobi-sama looked directly into my eyes, I could feel my eyes pounding and wishing I could let loose on the enemy. I know you are angry, he said, but blind rage will not help us now, your clan needs you, remember that. When you do find who forged the mission, I wish to be there when the ones responsible are brought to justice, I said in a chilly voice as I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to calm my anger before nodding to the Hokage that I understood. That is all I wanted to share with you, you are dismissed, the village chief reassured me, you will be. I sat there for a moment, trying to calm down the escalating anger inside of me. You suspect Danzo, don't you? When I was certain that we were the only people in the room, I asked Sarutobi-sama. As much as I wish otherwise, he admitted with a deep sigh. He was taking far too much stock in the rumors of the clan preparing a coup against Konoha. We didn't wish for that. That's stupid, I snapped back, turning my head away from the Hokage. The villagers respected us. They called my brother a hero. For heaven's sake, I was the Yondaime's bodyguard. Sarutobi-sama grinned. Before the Kyuubi attacked there was some rumbling of discontent among the Uchiha clan. But those were silenced after that night, he said with a slight scowl. Please, do not do anything rash. An attack on Danzo without proof will not support your position and Danzo will only see it as proof he was right to have the clan killed. I won't do anything now, I assured him, closing my eyes and nodding in agreement. But you better warn him to keep those Toiroot Anbu of his away from my clan. I will ensure he does so, Sarutobi-sama assured me, nodding. Now, you wanted guardianship of Sasuke-kun, right? I nodded, exhaling as I readied myself to tackle a substantial volume of documentation. Looking off to the side, I sent a wistful glance out the window of my office in the new residence of the Uchiha clan, a large renovated apartment complex within Konoha proper, as I moaned softly as I went through my third stack of paperwork that day. We realized that even with all the survivors in the building, we still didn't fill it to capacity, so the clan as a whole decided to buy the building that Sarutobi-sama had given us, and even though we still controlled the Uchiha district, we ended up renting out most of the buildings while leaving some of the more significant ones vacant for the time being. I looked in the mirror, which caused my Sharingan to fully evolve. I saw a red, four-pointed shuriken emblazoned on top of the five-petaled flower that was my Mangekyo Sharingan. I grinned pitifully at my brother's photo before letting the Sharingan fade when my office door was knocked on. I shouted, "Enter," to the other side of the door. One of the Chunin survivors came in through the open door. Yuriko-sama, We have something that requires your attention, he said grimly, causing my stomach to turn slightly as I stood up and grabbed my kodachi. What took place? As he fell into step behind me, I asked. We have been getting word of strangers showing interest in the younger members, said the Chunin. And now Seiko is missing. Now Fumi and Odahiro's daughter, she awoke her Sharingan that night. Danzo, I muttered to myself, have any of the children out right now return. Also get Sasuke-kun and Naruto-kun from the academy. I yelled at the Chunin, focusing on the markers I had placed on each member of my clan and finding one that was in a remote area of Konohagakure and several levels underground. Any shinobi are to be on guard. I will go speak with Sarutobi-sama. All right. As I jumped outside and flew in the direction of the Hokage's tower, the Chunin answered and then left to carry out his orders. It didn't take me long to get there, and I must have had a fierce look on my face because the receptionist, a highly skilled Anbu specialist, didn't even try to stop me from entering Sarutobi-sama's office. He's taken one of my clan members, I said coldly as I walked into the room, and Sarutobi-sama looked up from his paperwork. Homura-san coughing out some tea he was drinking, and Kaharu-san arched an eyebrow at my statement. I am merely informing you to be polite, but this is going too far. Are you positive it was him? Sarutobi-sama rubbed his forehead and asked, not because he didn't believe me, but because he wanted to make sure his bases were covered. I explained, frowning deeply and tapping one foot impatiently on the floor, and yes, I added, interrupting Kaharu as she opened her mouth, I am certain. Each one of my clan members is marked with a seal that lets me locate them within Konoha, and she is directly where a root base is suspected of being, I said. With a gesture for an ANBU, Sarutobi-sama said, very well, and said, get Rose Squad, I want them here yesterday. Since that night, it had been easier for my anger to come out and take charge of my actions, so I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then carefully exhaled to calm myself. Although I had every right to be angry right now, Danzo was a cunning opponent that I couldn't confront when I was angry. Sarutobi-sama demonstrated that he was prepared to defend his village at any time, even during times of peace, by removing his white robe and revealing his battle armor underneath. He said, while I was hoping I would be wrong, Danzo Shimura has stepped beyond his bounds today, causing the squad to shuffle a little. He has abducted a member of the Uchiha clan when he has been told they are off limits, Sarutobi-sama said, addressing a squad of 8 Anbu members who had just entered the room. Danzo will be arrested en route dismantled today. If he resists, he will be killed. The Hokage and 8 Anbu followed me as I leapt out of the window after he turned to face me and motioned for me to lead them. Maybe I should have entered the root base subtly, but in that moment, I didn't care and used earth release, tunnel excavation, to create a path straight into the base before rushing in. The number of root shinobi in the base made it clear that Danzo had been anticipating some sort of retaliation, but he was obviously not prepared for me to partially manifest with the help of the Sandaime Hokage and 8 active Anbu members. I didn't even stop in my tracks as I used my Susanoo Kodachi to cut through the root members who attempted to stop me as I continued to make my way through the base to protect my clan member. Admittedly, I was taken aback when I found Danzo standing by himself in a rather spacious room. You're here? Well, thank you for making it easy to find and kill you, I asked, a smile spreading across my face as I stood across from him and could see from the fighting behind me that Root was attempting to keep the rest of the attacking party at bay. Danzo shot back, glaring at me with his uncovered eye. I would be curious to know how you found this location, but he said it didn't matter because you wouldn't be living past this and I would use your eyes for Konoha. I pulled out my own Kodachi and snarled at him, my light blue chakra fluttering wildly around me before I composed myself. That's the thing you never saw though, I said, drawing out my own Kodachi. I do serve Konoha loyally. Danzo retorted, you Uchiha serve no one but yourselves, which made me snarl. I spoke in a controlled voice, enough. I will give you one chance to surrender, for Sarutobi-sama's sake, and I said, take it if you want to live. In response, Danzo blasted me with a gust of wind, which I deflected with my Susanoo skeletal arm. Very well then. Quest alert. Required. Take Seiko Uchiha from Danzo's base and kill him. Reward Roots Dissolution Shimura Danzo, level 65. 8,000 HP, CP, 10,000. Oh, I was going to enjoy this. I cracked off the ground as I circled to his side with Inaba Flicker, slashed at Danzo's neck to try to end it quickly, but the man blocked my strike with his cane. I kept moving and spun around to kick him with my heeled foot, making him dodge out of the way. He had a deep frown on his face as he reached up and tore the bandages off his head to reveal the Sharingan resting there. I'm going to guess that's Shisui's eye, I said as it changed into its Mangekyu form, and I felt a slight tugging in the back of my mind before pushing it away. Activating Chakra Flow. Chakra Scalpel. I charged him once more, preventing him from fleeing. Chakra Flow. Chakra Scalpel. Single slash. I declared as I struck him horizontally, causing the blade to extend a good 5 feet, causing him to duck before my foot touched his face. Why does it not function? I sensed a tug at the back of my mind once more, and he growled, "Why don't you stand down?" My eyes aren't normal Mangekyu, I told him as I started to walk towards him. Because, my eyes aren't normal Mangekyu, I said, the same eyes that Madara achieved before Konohagakure was formed, the proof of my brother's love for me. I blinked, realizing that the tugging was actually an attempt to use Koto Amatsukami on me to subjugate me. I can't let a single, implanted Mangekyu win. When I broke away and started attacking him from all sides, Danzo snarled as a sword of wind came to life in his hands as he blocked my sword. I knew you were too power-hungry to be trusted, he growled, requiring more chakra to keep his Sharingan uncovered. You're planning on usurping the Hokage's position yourself. Please, I already have my hands full enough with running what's left of my clan, I said to him as I ducked under a wind blade and jumped back a few steps. Plus, I don't think I would make a good Hokage, all said and done, I said, snorting with laughter as I succeeded in striking his right arm, causing it to slump limply in its sling as I severed the muscles. What kind of sister would I be if I stood in the way of Naruto-kun's desire to take the hat from Sarutobi-sama when he was strong enough? The weapon? I just stepped aside from the air blasts that Danzo snarled, saying, "Foolishness. Look at what Yagura is doing in Mizu no Kuni. Since weapons are not human, it is best to leave them that way." Oh no, my self-control is gone. Shimura, what was that? My Mangekyu throbbed in response to my rage, and I growled. Did you just imply that my younger brother isn't human? Stone can burn when heated sufficiently, so I may have pumped a little too much chakra into the sealless fire release. Great flame annihilation, that I spat out before he could react. It's a cool fact that the entire room was suddenly ablaze. As I strode through my own flames, shielded by my Susanoo, I confessed, I honestly just thought you were overzealous. But, I was wrong. You're simply just an idiot, and at least if I was made Hokage, I would be better at it than you. I raised an eyebrow in response to Danzo's roar of rage as a huge plume of smoke signaled the arrival of his summoned Baku, who extinguished the flames. He couldn't have believed that would be sufficient to defeat me, could he? He apparently did, because as I stayed rooted in place with a generous application of chakra to my feet, the elephant creature started to try to suck me into its mouth. You know, you just set me up perfectly, I said as I activated Kamionanayo, not even bothering with Aim no Ukihashi, with the Baku trying to suck everything in until it was forcibly dismissed by the most likely excruciating internal burns it was suffering. Want to give a Ryo another go? Seriously, this is just sad. I grew up hearing how you were the equal to Sarutobi-sama. Now, all I see before me is a pathetic old man who doesn't realize, or refuses to realize, that his way was never going to work, I said, mocking the now enraged Danzo, who was glaring at me like he was trying to use Amaterasu. As more of my Susanoo materialized and transformed into its cloaked form, I shook my head and said icily, Tobarama Senju-sama would be disappointed with you, interrupting his response as he was abruptly stabbed by Amananahoko. But rest easy, I will continue to protect Konohagakure and its people as I always have. As his bloody body vanished from view, my eyes grew wide, and then he materialized behind me, holding a wind blade. No, protecting Konoha and securing its position above everyone must be my responsibility. With the sword drawing closer, he yelled angrily, but it was abruptly stopped by a swarm of earthen spears that rose from the ground and slathered Danzo's body. What if the Konoha people don't want to rule? He looked up in shock as the figure dominated the room, Shisui's eye turning milky white as Izanagi took its toll. Susanoo, complete manifestation, I asked him as I took the Susanoo further, letting the cloak fade to reveal a fully feminine figure with sweeping wings and a Tengu-like face as it loomed over him. Goodbye, Danzo Shimura, traitor of Konohagakure. I let out a sigh and let the manifestation be dismissed after Amananahoko cleaved his head from his body, silencing his scream. I turned on my heel and started walking in the direction of my captured clan member without even looking at the body again. Fortunately, it was decided that many of the younger members could simply be brought into the academy for retraining, while many of the older ones were taken away by the Anbu. The remainder of the mission proceeded smoothly, especially after Danzo was killed and any seals he placed on his members were declared void. I wasn't entirely sure why, but I didn't really care as I brought Seiko-chan home to her parents, who were ecstatic. When I arrived at our house, I was met by the always happy Naruto-kun and a relieved Sasuke-kun. I will kill anyone who pursues them for them, the clan, and the village. What more was a kunoichi big sister supposed to do for her younger brothers?
This was it for today. To watch next part, subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. Till then, see you next time.